With the Buttkicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Buttkicker. The future is feeling.
This is the day that a lot of these drivers will have been waiting for. We are here at the home of Indycar at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the classic Indycar series powered by the Buttkicker Indy 500, brought to you also by MKT Manufacturing. My name is Connery Maddock, and I'll be here with Andrew Kinsella, bringing you the coverage of this absolutely fantastic event, the Classic IndyCar Series 5th Indianapolis 500. Drivers are already getting out there and getting themselves prepared for what's to come, but let's have a recap of what has gone before. We started off the season at Homestead, Miami on the April 3rd, and then we've gone through 11 rounds of racing to arrive here, round number 12, the finale of the Classic IndyCar Series, right here, right now, Andrew. This is always a fantastic occasion when you've got an Indy 500 to run.
Yeah, absolutely, and there's no better spot for the Indy 500, in my opinion, than as the finale of such an epic season that we've had before us today. It's really been one of those seasons where it's been a story of domination from one driver, but there's been a lot of battles, and it sort of belies how close the action has been all day, or all season. But now that we are here today, it's all about the Indy 500, Connery. It's all about this one race, and this is the one that means more than anything else in this series for these drivers.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And well, we already have a champion. We crowned that just a couple of rounds ago. Our overall champion, Joshua Chin. Mathematically impossible for anyone else to do anything about that. He's also got the road championship as well. The overall championship still yet undecided, but Chin is starting to run away with that one as well. And well, it's going to be a fantastic occasion here, especially in this series. It's always such a special race, this one, and we do indeed have a little bit of a special guest joining us in the commentary booth, at least for the pre-race occasions here. We have Andrew Luden from the Buttkicker, which is the title sponsor of the Classic IndyCar Series. Andrew, welcome to the broadcast, and just take me through the what you do at the Buttkicker and why you decided to support the Classic IndyCar Series.
Sure, and thanks, Andrew and Connery. So I am the head of gaming for Githammer, who our brand is Buttkicker. We're glad to be supporting Classic IndyCar Series. We were connected through the Lionheart Indy Series, which I think there's some shared membership across the board, and look to be a fantastic series to sponsor. So we started this year, and I'm pretty confident we'll continue the next. We've got some great prizing that's going to be going to all the winners. I know the champion's already been crowned, and he's going to have a choice of our Four Corners kit with Gamer Plus or Gamer Pro to be able to simulate all four corners of a vehicle on whatever sim rig he's running. And then we've got some great prizing down the line for Rookie of the Year and several of the other prized categories. So really looking forward to getting those out to people, seeing some great clean racing at Indianapolis, which is actually only about a 4-hour drive from where our real life offices are. So nice to have it on home turf, as it were.
Yeah, definitely in your own backyard here at Indianapolis. And, well, these drivers, of course, will be very, very nervous before this race. Many of them will have competed in iRacing Indy 500s before. They've competed in other leagues where they have Indy 500s as well. What would be your advice to the drivers as they get themselves onto the starting grid?
So I would have to say that I am not an expert, but with anything like this, you got to take it one step at a time. Even though it's the finale, it's best to, in my experience, treat it like any other race and not let those nerves overwhelm you.
Yeah, it is absolutely important. I mean, me and the other Andrew will be talking about that through the opening stages of the race. You just got to keep yourself cool, calm, and collected. Not let the occasion get the better of you. It is the biggest race of the season here in the Classic IndyCar Series, powered by the Buttkicker. And to complicate things somewhat, we will actually have a traditional here for the Indy 500 3-wide start. We don't usually see it, at least on our racing official side of things, but due to this being a league, we have the capacity to send our own pace car out there to try and get everyone organised for the start. So that's just another little element that these drivers will have to contend with, and it's no mean feet when you're trying to maintain that 3-wide in towards turn number 1. But as we're getting ourselves, all of our drivers here on the starting grid here, it'll be a fantastic opportunity for these guys to get themselves mentally prepared. And since everyone is pretty much ready here, Andrew, just give them the command.
All right, drivers, start your engines.
Well, there we go. Thank you very much for joining us there, Andrew. And, well, if you want and come and visit us in the middle of the race or even towards the end of the race, then you are very much free to do so. But like everyone else watching at home, I hope you enjoy this occasion. There we go. So as drivers are getting themselves all stacked up behind, well, what is the iRacing pace car here for the moment. So we'll get ourselves, just to explain the procedure here, Mr. Kinsella, we've got 1 lap under the normal iRacing pace car. And then, of course, we'll be getting ourselves 2 laps under the custom pace car, that Corvette out there, actually driven by yourself, Andrew, if you can still hear me and talk.
Yes, I can hear you. I'm down in the pace car right now on the grid, and this is when the butterflies start to sink in, Connery. This is where you finally are through the pre-race stuff. You've practiced, you've done everything you possibly can, but now it's the time where just before the race, the cars are rolling, the cars are about to form up in their 3-wide formation after this lap. This is where the butterflies start to sink in. This is where the unknown sort of happens for these drivers. They're simply hoping that all goes well on this start. It's a 3-wide start, as you mentioned. This is not something that these drivers are very used to. Of course, we have it once a year at the Indy 500 for this series, but it's not something that they do all the time. And it's a different animal, these 3-wide starts are. I've been a part of them before, and having the cars on your inside and your outside, knowing that you're going 3-wide, barreling into that first corner, there's nothing like it.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and well, hopefully everyone's able to get through the first lap unscathed, and we get a clean green flag run right at the very start of this race. Of course, that is not a guarantee. Of course, the nerves getting better to the drivers would be a big issue here, but they've got to keep in mind, Andrew, that this is a long race. You know, we've got 200 laps in total to get under our belt here, 500 miles. You don't want to be binning it in the first mile and a half.
Absolutely. You cannot win this race in the first corner, in the first lap, but you can certainly lose this race. And all of these drivers are going to be aware of that, because this race just means so much. You can't afford to have that happen to you where you're just throwing your race away and throwing what you've been building towards all season away in that first lap. So I think there's going to be a fair amount of caution. I feel like there's going to be a fair amount of timidness in that first corner, but there can always be a little bit of miscommunication when that happens as well, Connery. It's a difficult balance for these drivers to strike, and it's going to be very interesting to see how they all handle it in 2 laps time. So there'll be 1 lap here, and then at the end of the second lap I'll be accelerating away, and that's when you'll see Henry Bennett leading this field to the green flag.
Yeah, and well, these drivers not quite getting themselves formed up 3 wide just yet. That will happen when they coming up towards the start-finish line for the second time of asking behind the Corvette pace car here. You're seeing some drivers get a little bit eager, fanning themselves out 3 wide already, getting themselves all prepared for this start. This will be a good opportunity to take you through the starting grid then of this classic IndyCar series powered by the Buttkicker MKT Engineering Indy 500. Well, it's going to be on the front row, inside of the front row, Henry Bennett. Then we have Joshua Chen in the middle of the front row, and on the outside of the front row, Andrew Agan. Row 2 consists of Hoffman, you got Simmons and Stum on that second row. On the third row, you got Grandi, Tucker and Woodall. Row number 4 consists of Grosser, Shoemake and Dance. Then you've got row number 5 with Love, Barnco and Wilson, with row 6 consisting of Pitkanen, Silvassi and Ilya Olia. Then you've got row 7, Stanley, Godso and Styles. And then row number 8, Diggs, Kinder and LaVille. Then towards the very back of the field, you've got row number 9, Aitken, Turner and Michael. That's Nate Michael, the number 15 car back there. And then our final row actually only consists of 2 cars. It's Sant McEwen and Andrew Wood. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Andrew Wood tries to work his way through this field from the very last row of the starting grid. But as these cars exit their way out of turn number 2, they're heading down the back straight. They've gotten themselves all formed up 3 wide. And we're just about ready to get going for the classic IndyCar series, MKT Engineering Indy 500. This is the time where a lot of these drivers have been waiting for, and we've been waiting for this moment for a long time throughout this entire season as well. Of course, most of the championships have already been decided, but the crown of an Indy 500 race win is certainly going to be hugely sought after, no matter what the championship says. Coming up towards the final corner then to get ourselves started here for this epic race. Henry Bennett, Josh Chin, Ethan Agan on that front row. What can they do from that position? Pace car is now down and in. We're about ready to go racing once again here in the Classic IndyCar Series. 200 laps, 500 miles here at Indianapolis is underway. Drivers just coming across the line to complete the first lap of 200 here. Andrew, you're going to get yourself out of that pace car now. Join me in the commentary booth for this one. It seems like the front of the field has gotten themselves, at least relatively strung out already. We have a bit of a 5-car breakaway at the end of the first lap onto lap 2.
Yeah, it was all really nice and orderly there from your drivers coming through that start, and that's just sort of what I expected there. But the 5-car breakaway is a little bit unexpected. I think there was a little bit of a checkup there coming in that 6th or 7th position. It's allowed these 5 cars to break away, and that's actually pretty important this early on. If they can get a good sort of breakaway going here, it's going to make these drivers at the front, it's going to make their lives much easier for this opening portion of the race. Of course, we're not expecting it to go green the entire race, but there is something to be said about having a nice little buffer early on.
Yeah, absolutely. And, well, those that would be a fan of a green flag run at the very start will be very happy with how that start went, with everyone getting themselves strung out and, well, with this 5-car breakaway at the very front of the field. It is Joshua Chin that leads from Henry Bennett, from Ethan Agan at the moment. Hoffman and Sturm will be the last cars in that leading pack. If we look back to this sort of secondary pack, though, you have Mike Grandi currently residing in 6th place, holding off Joshua Tucker in 7th. And, of course, you've got Robert Grosser here back in the pack. You've got Jamie Wilson right up his trumpet as well, heading down in towards turn number 1. But a lot of these drivers are just going to be thinking about the long run here at the moment. Not going to go for any rash moves. unless, of course, they qualified out of position, in which case you would understand them wanting to try and press forwards early on. But for pretty much everyone else, Andrew, it's just getting maybe 10, 20 laps under your belt and then see where you are from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And what these drivers are doing as well, Connery, is they're just sort of assessing how their car is working in relation to their competition. It's early on in this going, but you're already going to start to see in these next 3 or 4 laps here some differences in setup, some differences in pace between the cars. So, like, you look at Jamie Wilson, he's all over the back of that Vortex Sim Racing car right in front of him. He's able to follow really, really close behind. So it looks like Wilson, at least in that Team Chimera car, has a strong car right now, if he's able to follow that close. So that's the type of thing that these drivers are going to be noticing, and it's going to be a question of when do they make the moves, when do they try to deal with the traffic in front of them and put themselves more in a position where they think they should be.
Indeed they do. It's a lot of thinking indeed required over the course of this race, because you mentioned it right there, Andrew. You know, these cars, you know, these guys would have been working on these setups for a very, very long time up until this point, making sure that car is dialed in and tuned to how this track is going to race. But of course, you know, they would have planned either to be running primarily in clear air, or they would have planned primarily to be running in the draft and getting up in the other car's dirty air. And of course, you do have in-car adjustments to try and deal with the different situations you come across. But sometimes your car's just set up in a certain way and you have to deal with it.
Yeah, of course, you have your weight jacker, which is basically a hydraulic ram in the right rear suspension that physically raises the right rear up or down in relation to the rest of the car, and that basically makes it either looser or tighter. Similarly, you have front and rear anti-roll bars that function similarly, and depending on what your car's doing and what the exact characteristics the driver is feeling, they'll pull on one of those adjustment levers to try and maximize how their car reacts over. And then the other thing is that they'll be using those adjustments as well, not just to fix the handling, but also to stay ahead of the handling. As the tires wear off, the handling will change on these cars, and it's going to require the drivers to be proactive on their tools and make sure that they're really maintaining that balance throughout the course of the run.
It's all about keeping that balance in the right place, because it's going to change sometimes corner to corner depending on where you are, how close you are to the car in front, what the track conditions are like as well, all influences. And look at those track conditions at the moment, 44 degrees on that track surface at the moment. That's degrees Celsius, so a very, very warm track, and we're not even in the hottest part of the day yet here, Andrew, so that's going to mean that the grip out there is going to be maybe a little bit less than they would have expected.
Yeah, this is the grippiest the track is going to be for about the next 150 laps or so, Connery. It really is going to take a toll on these drivers, given how hot the track is already. They're going to have to do a good job of taking care of their tires over the course of these runs, because even though this car is on the older tire model, there is some significant fall-off that'll happen in terms of grip level and in terms of the ability for these cars to run as close as they are right now.
Absolutely, and of course, you know, you got to be thinking about the tires, and as always here in an Indianapolis 500, you have to be thinking about the fuel situation as well. Depending on whether you're in clear air or in dirty air trying to get the draft, the fuel tank is good from 35 to 38 laps. So that is sort of your fuel window here today as things get a little bit sketchy up front. Chin still holds on to the race lead. But yeah, they've also got to be thinking about the fuel situation here at the moment, as well as the track condition, especially if we're expecting long green flag runs here today. We've got 11 laps in the books. We're on lap number 12 here at the moment. Still green from the drop of the initial green flag.
Yeah, and you can tell, I think, that Henry Bennett already is playing that fuel game that you mentioned, Connery, because Josh Chin had a big moment coming out of turn 3 there. He nearly got up and into that outside wall. And Henry Bennett, despite having to negotiate that checkup, he didn't really look to try and pass Josh Chin. So I think he's kind of forcing Josh to tow this group around for now, making Josh use up that fuel, and he's just sitting right in that draft range there and allowing Josh to tow, and Henry's going to be saving fuel here, as we already have a car down pit road here. That's Robert Barnicow.
Yeah, Barnacle down and in this situation, and that is very, very early. So let's just see if there is any damage to that car. I wouldn't have thought so, given everyone got pretty clean off of that initial start. So unless he's like slightly tagged the wall and maybe had a bit of bodywork damage or put the wheel out of alignment slightly, I really see no other reason than to come down in now, unless you're trying to extremely backstall from the end of the race if you think this is going to go green all the way.
Yeah, this is a little bit puzzling for me because it did look like it was just a standard pit stop, didn't it, Connery? He didn't have any damage repair, 8.4 seconds, so there was nearly some action as Robert Barnacle was coming out of the pit lane. There was nearly some action in turn 1 there. In terms of the strategy, I'm not sure that I like this call from him unless he was just not comfortable with where he was on the track. But it's basically you lose a lap in about or just under a lap here. So he's probably we have a caution. That's the 77.
Yep, that is Joshua Tucker in the number 77 car around, brings out our first caution of the day. And we'll get ourselves a replay to just see exactly how this one happened, because it was a bit of a weird spin there coming out of turn 4. Let's have a look at things and see if it was influenced by anyone else. Nope, he got mega loose and narrowly avoids the barrier on the outside, but a heavy impact with the barrier on the inside brings out our first caution. We'll get another look at it, perhaps from the onboard view.
And you can see even in turn 3, he was all over that rubble strip, all over the apron here, but then he really hits it in turn 4, and as soon as he hits that, the rear end steps out, saves it once, but it just snaps right around again, and unfortunately, I think that can be chalked up to driver error there, Connery.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's always going to be at least one, isn't that has a bit of a moment over the course of this race, and you can see how bent up that rear wing is. It was a side-on impact into the barrier as well, so the right side suspension is not going to be looking pretty, and I wouldn't be surprised if Tucker takes the rest of this race as a little bit of a retirement. So the Indianapolis 500 has taken one victim so far in this race. We got our first caution of the day out there. Of course, is able to bunch everyone back up now pretty much. So the 5-car breakaway that we saw in the early stages perhaps has been decimated somewhat as everyone else is able to close back up. But with 15 laps having been run at that point, some of these drivers may be tempted to take a visit down towards the pit lane, but we will just have to wait and see.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a number of these drivers peel off, particularly if you're in the back, but even if you're in the front, a 13-lap run is a fairly long run here. It's worth staying out ahead of the strategy and possibly coming down pit road, and I think you're going to see a number of drivers do just that, as we see most of these drivers, in fact, coming down pit lane. So it'll be interesting to see, actually, if anyone stays out here, maybe tries to get some track position out of it, maybe some guys in the back. Robert Barnacle will definitely be one who will stay out and try and get his lap back, but he's going to be all the way at the back of the queue because of it.
Yeah, and the drivers that I'm seeing stay out here are ones that are going to be a lap down, unless Ant McEwen is staying out. The only driver on the leading lap to stay out. So that's an interesting situation there. I have to wonder if he's just going for a leading lap point or something like that, and then we'll come down in on that next lap, given that he's towards the very back of the field. But that's a very interesting situation. What is also an interesting situation is the race off of pit road, because Henry Bennett has beat Joshua Chin to the punch.
Yes, he has, and he actually had just passed Josh just before the caution came out there, so he was first on to pit lane and first off as well, and it is worth mentioning, Connery, not just Art McEwen, it's also Nate Michael in the 15 car. He's also stayed out here, so there are 2 drivers staying out. It'll be interesting to see whether they were, again, just trying to lead that lap, or whether they're actually going to be coming down pit lane, or whether they're going to stay out here and try to use the track position. So little bit of strategy games being played early on. The other thing that I did want to mention for any of you Lewis Woodall fans is he had a little bit of an internet issue on the pace laps, and he's unfortunately not been able to resume this race. So we actually have 2 retirements with both Josh Tucker and now Lewis Woodall out of the race.
Indeed. So yeah, interesting situation here. We'll have to see what happens here with Michael and McEwen, whether they continue out and, well, they'll get themselves P1 and 2 on the restart, or they dip back in and come on towards the pit lane just like everyone else did on that previous lap. So the strategy games are being played already, I get the feeling, as we see potentially, and McEwen's coming in, but Nate Michael is staying out, and he will be the leader on this restart.
And I like this play from Nate. You have no real downside if you're Nate Michael from doing this. You get to see what your car's like in clean air. You get to see how well you can hang with these drivers, and you get to see what this type of call is like later on in the race. So even if you drop back here, even if you find that your car isn't really working, that's some valuable data that you have 185 laps to overcome. So I kind of like this play from Nate Michael here, Connery.
Also, you're betting on another caution within, ideally, another 15, 20 laps time for Nate Michael, so then you can come down in with everyone else and be able to get a net benefit out of this call. So it is definitely a ballsy one for Nate Michael, someone who started down in 26th place, which is, for all intents and purposes, towards the very back of the field. One from the very rear is where he started. So this is a very, very big call from the 15. Let's see if he's able to hang it up there with the best of the Classic IndyCar Series.
Yeah, the real test is about to begin for Nate Michael for sure.
It really is. You can see the lights on the top of the pace car have gone out, so that signals that we will be going green this next time by. So the restart order will be Michael, Bennett, Chin, Egan, and Hoffman as the top 5. We saw an initial top 5 breakaway on the initial start here of this Indianapolis 500, but let's see if we get a similar sort of situation arising out of this one. It will be Nate Michael to try and dictate this restart here. How long can he hold on as far as the race lead is concerned with 18-lap all tyres compared to the fresh tyres of all of those behind, especially given the very hot track conditions that we have here today. Pace car just about to pull itself down on towards the pit lane. Field under the control of Michael now, waiting for that green flag to be shown by Barney the Flagman, and we get back racing here in the MKT Manufacturing Classic IndyCar Series Indy 500. Nate Michael immediately defensive on the way down in towards turn number 1 as we get this race back going. All clean through turn number 1 for the front couple of positions.
A little bit strung out in the back. Positions 4, 5, and 6 sort of stringing out from there, and it looks like Jamie Wilson ducking down to the inside there trying to find some clean air, but here comes Henry Bennett making the move here on Nate Michael into turn 3.
Change of race leader already. Henry Bennett back up towards the very pointy end of the field. Nate Michael being shuffled down into second place. But now he could just rely on that slipstream of Henry Bennett ahead to try and keep himself in contention and defend from those behind as well. So it might be a little bit trickier for Chin, Egan, and Hoffman to try and get through on him compared to what Bennett was able to do, given that, the leader has no draft.
Yeah, absolutely. But the interesting thing for me is you mentioned the draft, and Henry Bennett seemed very, very intent on not leading throughout the course of his first run. I wonder how quickly we'll see Josh Chin start to cycle back up toward the lead of the race, because it definitely seemed like, at least in the first run, Henry was trying to follow. But this time he's really stamped his authority here and is trying to lead now.
Yep, he is. And, I think, with the mindset of Henry Bennett here, do you think he would have wanted to try and keep himself ahead of the unknown element, so to speak, of Nate Michael and to just try and pull a gap here at this stage? But it's so hard to do so here at this Indianapolis Motor Speedway, because you're giving so much benefit in terms of the draft of the cars behind that it is so difficult to try and break away. And would you even want to, considering the fuel situation as well? That's another thing to consider.
Well, and can you is the other question, because I'm not sure that Henry Bennett really can have a proper breakaway going at this point. He definitely seems like his car maybe has a little bit more downforce than Josh does, because these drivers right behind him, they're really able to draft up behind him on the straightaways and even pulling in sort of 5th and 6th positions now into this lead draft once again. So I think if you're Henry, he's just sort of hanging out at the front and, as you say, keeping the unknown quantity behind him at this point, and that's his game plan. Meanwhile, we've got a little bit of a battle going on in this mid-pack. Marshall Stanley right behind Jamie Wilson and Andrew Aitken right in front of them.
Oh, and we actually, if we come off of this one, go back to the race lead. Nate Michael deciding that he wants to get back up into the best seat in the house, at least in terms of track position, and gets himself back to the race lead. Henry Bennett, is he going to respond? It looks like he is. He gets the overlap down in towards turn number 1. Tries to sling it down and in, not quite clear coming off the corner. Nate Michael continue to try and fight this one of all he has. Even though we are so early on in the race, they're still racing hard.
And they're actually coming up on the lap car, or the tail end of the lead lap with Robert Barnacow as well. So that's going to put in another wrinkle into this battle. But Nate Michael, he's looking really racy here, Connery. He's not letting Henry Bennett and these titans of the CIS stamp their authority on this. He wants to lead it, and he is doing so right now.
Yeah, doing a very good job as well. And well, it's up to these guys behind to try and find a response to it. Whether or not it be, well, just let Michael lead this race for this entire stint and put him in a little bit of a tricky situation with regards to the fuel. That definitely is a valid option for all of these cars behind. But do you want to necessarily be giving someone the gift of track position? Maybe it's not as important here early on in the race as it is later on. But again, it's all these variables that these drivers have to consider, because it's not just going 200 miles an hour plus in towards these corners trying to avoid the walls. It's also, you have to think about the strategy while also doing that, which is incredible.
It's the strategy not only of who you're letting by, who you're racing with and when, but it's also the strategy of what your fuel numbers look like, what your tools look like, what your tires look like. These drivers are doing so much in the car throughout the entirety of this race, and you have to be on top of your game from the moment and the drop of the green flag. You have to know with intention what you are going to be doing at every phase of the race. It's really difficult to run a 500-mile race, and it's even more difficult when you don't have a full pit crew behind you like they do in the real world.
Yeah, incredibly difficult, and I certainly don't envy these guys. Of course, they might have a little bit of assistance from their teams behind the scenes to try and spot for them or try and work out strategies, but in the end, the responsibility does lie with the driver for the calls. And while we see the battle for the race lead continuing on between Nate Michael and Henry Bennett, and as a result, we had a little bit of a 5-car breakaway once again off of that restart. But because these guys at the front are going side by side through a couple of these laps, it is bringing the cars behind back in. So it's bringing Grosser back into the equation. It's bringing Cameron Dance back in as well. And a battle for second place. Might have been a slow run there through 3 and 4 for Joshua Chin. Allowed Nate Michael to, actually it was Nate Michael dropping back, maybe he made a mistake, and now he's coming under threat from Ethan Ager down the inside. Oh, they get so close to banging wheels, coming through turn 1, but they're able to get through unscathed, and this is now trouble for Nate Michael because he's stuck on the outside here with an absolute freight train trying to come through on him.
Yeah, it all started almost a lap ago, Connery. Nate Michael got a little bit high coming through turn 3, and on the exit of 3, Chin was able to put his car underneath him, and it's been a snowball effect for Michael ever since then, now with Jan Hoffman looking to the inside. But you can really see the other part of racing at Indianapolis is the groove here. You've really got a narrow window of where the car works really well, and you see the cars on the outside, they're really hesitant to get out of that really dark shaded area because there's just very little grip on that outside line, and it's creating situations, especially with Michael on those older tires as he's falling back through this field. It's creating some very tenuous situations there.
I remember that track temperature is just going to climb. It's at 44 degrees Celsius here at the moment, and still room to climb even higher because we're at 12:30 in the afternoon here in sim time. The in-sim date is the 27th of May, because of course it's an Indy 500, of course it has to take place in May. We're taking the conditions from then, so it's not like it would be running real time on a cold November afternoon. We're still in the middle of May when it comes to the sim time, so that temperature definitely representative of that, and something the driver's going to have to continue to deal with throughout the rest of this one. Once it gets to the middle of this race, when the temperature is higher by another couple of degrees, that's when they're really going to start to feel it, especially towards the end of the fuel stints.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be a topic of conversation throughout the day, just seeing which cars is set up for that long run, which ones start to fall off just a bit. And these drivers will feel it in their cars as well. They'll be making changes through the pit stops because you can change the wing angles, both front and rear, in your pit stop. It does add a couple of extra seconds onto your stop time, but there's a lot of options these drivers have to change. You can also change your tire pressures as well in these stops, maybe make a little bit of an adjustment handling that way as well. So a lot that these drivers can do, even though that they're now in the car and they can't really change any of the mechanical side of the car, there's a lot that can happen.
These guys heading their way out of 10-4 across the start-finish line once again, the Brooks. Franz Joseph Sturm holding off 6th place, holding on to 6th place at the moment from Cameron Dance, who has, well, he's gained a couple of positions off the start here. He was in 12th place on the initial start. He's up to 7th, and we've seen just how capable the rookie of this series, at least, Cameron Dance is, throughout this entire season. Of course, you know, he's had a particular strength at the road course side of things, but here on the oval, still seems to be solidly within that top 10, and I wouldn't be surprised if he slowly but steadily climbs through the order over the course of this evening as well.
Yeah, Cameron has really impressed me on the ovals. He's had a number of really strong runs. I don't think he's really shown his full potential on the ovals. I think he's still figuring them out, but he's definitely improving race by race and lap by lap. And that's something that you can really take advantage of in a long race like this. It does give you the time to keep on figuring things out. And the other thing that's good for Cameron Dance is he's also hooked up with his teammate Jack Stiles, who's right behind him in 8th position. So the two Orbit Motorsports cars hooked up. That's something to keep in mind throughout the course of this race, is having your teammate around you at Indianapolis is such a huge help as well.
Yeah, it is, and well, you can share the drafting, you can share the slingshotting. It's a mouthful to say that phrase. And you know, you can work together to try and work your way through this field and try and navigate this race. You can share the fuel-saving responsibilities between the two of you, and it just puts you in a much better spot and gives you more options when it comes to playing around with the strategy as well. So it's always beneficial to have friends out there on circuit. Meanwhile, down in P13, just saw a bit of a moment there. There's Randy Shoemake towards the inside, trying to hold off Patrick Silvassi in the number 51 car. So Silvassi started 17th up to P13, so it's been a positive day so far for the number 51, making up all those positions. Aiken similarly so up in 12th place at the moment. He actually started in P24, so a lot of the drivers that have had themselves... Ooh, we had a bit of a moment there. Sebastian Kinder on towards pit lane. I have to wonder if he's lucky to even get it on pit lane. That car is severely damaged here at the moment, and I have to wonder if it was a problem out of turn 4 that spat him down the pit lane and keeps us green.
Yeah, it was a problem out of turn 4 for Sebastian Kinder, and you can see the car was loose really early on, so that is a handling problem for Kinder. Hits that inside wall and then just barely misses that attenuator there on the end. And fortunately, because of where he was on that pit entry, and because he was able to keep it pointed in the right direction, we stayed green here. But yeah, this car was not handling well. Oh, we have a yellow here.
We do have a yellow. We will watch this one run through with Sebastian Kinder, and then we'll jump back to what has happened on the live pictures here in just a moment. But I think it was Patrick Silvassi, who we were just with before this replay, has seemed to have had a little bit of a problem. So that's Sebastian Kinder into the wall and down on towards the pit lane. What happened here? We'll stick with the replay. We might have to wait a couple of moments to see what happened here. What has happened to the number 51 car? Because it looks like he was the only one involved in this one, potentially. Whoa, big moment, big lockup. Caution for that?
Now that would be strange if that was the only caution, but you'll notice that those were two Team Watson Racing drivers with some really bad oversteer at the same time here, as we're now maybe Robert Barnicow. Oh, that might have been the caution as well.
Back on circuit.
Oh. Really dicey stuff there. good job from the leaders there to get around Robert Barnicow, but that's going to bend his suspension as well. So we had a number of different incidents all happening at once, and I think maybe just an accumulation of all of those incidents at once brought out that caution there. But that was two Team Watson Racing drivers getting really, really loose at the same time. So I think that was a setup issue for those two drivers in Kinder and Silvassi. That is
one of the more sensitive cautions that I've seen come out here in iRacing. It judges out multiple things, doesn't it, Andrew? It judges it whether or not the car in trouble is on the racing line or not, and how slow they're actually going, and if they're spun all the way around. Lots of factors sort of determined to try and bring out an automatic caution here on iRacing, but I've never really seen one quite like that, where everyone's able to keep up at least a decent amount of speed after their incidents.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a strange one, but I've experienced this as well, and it does happen sometime. But what did we say about Nate Michael before there, Connery? He was in 4th place coming into that pit cycle there from basically the back of the field at the start. So that pit cycle and that caution worked out perfectly for him.
Yep, it absolutely did, because everyone's forced to come down and in at the moment because they're not wanting to feel like they're going to go back out there with 15 to 20 lap old tyres. And well, here we go, race off of pit lane once again. Bennett is just about going to get it compared to Joshua Chin. Let's have a look further down the order. Nate Michael, of course, he had a bit of a longer stop because he had more of a fuel tank to fill, I suppose, here in this one. So everyone else got themselves around about the low 8-second stops, but Nate had to put in 10 seconds, 10.2 to be exact. So he does lose a couple of positions as a result of that, but it's still a massive net benefit from that strategy call, because he's in 7th place now. And remember, he started at the very back of the grid.
Yeah, he'll be very happy with how that worked out. He was probably about 3 laps from having to come in and down pit lane under green flag, so that worked out absolutely perfectly for that 15 car.
Well, there we go. Puts him in a good position now, solidly inside that top 10. And on equal footing compared to everyone else on the strategy. Art McEwen has stayed out in this situation. He's on 20 lap old, he's 20 laps on his stint here at the moment. So I have to wonder again if this is just a leading lap situation, or if he's going to bring that car down on towards the pit lane, or try and do a repeat of what Nate Michael was able to do, but on a few lap older tyres. But no, all indications show that he's going to be heading his way down on towards the pit lane, and Henry Bennett will re-inherit the race lead.
And Art does tend to do this. I think he's just a little bit more comfortable with that nice open pit lane. Particularly, he's traditionally sort of towards the rear of the field, and it does get really busy under caution when all the cars come down pit lane. So it can be a good idea if you're at the back of the grid anyways, maybe get that lead lap at the same time you're also having that nice clean pit in, pit out, and no chance of drama. So not necessarily the worst call to stay out that extra lap for Art.
Yeah, not the worst call ever, and he can comfortably bring it down on towards the pit lane and get himself all set already for the restart here. That's what we would have thought, and we will just have to have a moment here just to try and fix something with the stream. So if you see. Actually, we'll do it after this restart, because I don't want to miss this restart. But there is something that we do have to fix with the stream. So we will get a couple of laps of racing in, and then you might see the stream buffer for just one moment while we fix a little bit of an issue. So that's just the situation that's going to go on here. But in terms of the restart, it will be Henry Bennett from Joshua Chin, from Ethan Agan, then from Jan Hoffman. That's the top 4 cars heading on to this restart. Pace car lights are out, of course, so that means we are going to go green this next time by. So we've had quite a bit of excitement already. We've had interesting strategy calls. Nate Michael actually being very, very successful in making the right call at the right time and having the right sort of circumstances land at his feet as well, with a very well-timed caution to put him up into 6th place and on equal footing in terms of the strategy with everyone else. But there is still a very long way to go. 164 laps at this race starts. We're about to get going once again in the MKT engineering, MKT manufacturing, Indianapolis 500 here for the Classic IndyCar Series, powered by the Buttkicker. Green flag, and Henry Bennett and Joshua Chin off in the way.
Yeah, but Ethan Egan had a really torrid start there. He did not get away well, and that's checked up the whole field behind him. So this might just end up being a 2-car breakaway. And if there are 2 cars that can break away, it's definitely Henry Bennett and Josh Chin here.
Absolutely is. And, well, they're doing very, very well right there at the very front of the field. Egan, like you said, sleeping on the restart there, just not able to get the right timing. And as a result, he is at risk of losing the front 2, potentially, on these initial laps of the restart. So that's not the situation you want to be in whatsoever. So hopefully for Egan's race, for Hoffman and for Dance, that they're able to sort of stem this bleeding a little bit, get themselves right back up to the rear wings of those 2 cars ahead of them, and it looks like they might just be able to do so. So it wasn't, I don't think it was necessarily enough of a jump for the front 2 to break away. I think this will all bunch up once again.
It will, but it does mean that it will be a 5-car breakaway here, because Nate Michael did not get a good start either. So that's broken up the Orbit Motorsports cars. Cameron Dance in that lead pack, but Nate Michael, Jack Stiles, and Franz Josef Sturm are almost a 1.5 seconds now behind Cameron Dance.
Indeed they are. So that's the situation there. We will take the onboards with Franz Josef Sturm as Nate Michael and Jack Stiles go side by side directly ahead of him. This is just going to lose them yet more time to that leading 5-car breakaway. Nate Michael wanting to fight for every position, every hard-earned position that he was able to gain with that strategy call. Sturm basically acting as our cameraman at this stage on the way down in towards turn number 3. Stiles has been able to get through. Nate Michael trapped on the outside here. He's going to have to deal with Sturm heading his way down the inside now. And, well, this is a little bit of deja vu for Nate Michael compared to what happened towards the end of that initial stint. Getting freight trained on the inside perhaps. But let's see if he's able to hold on here. Sturm will still have the inside for turn 1. Michael was tempted to squeeze him all the way down towards the bottom there, but thought better of it. And now Mike Grandi has decided that he wants to follow through the tyre tracks. That's how easy it is to lose multiple positions here at this racetrack.
Yeah, finally, Nate Michael was able to get in behind Mike Grandi, and he's in fact going to even fight back coming into turn 3 here, try to take that inside line, maybe hang Mike Grandi out to drive here. Whoa, we had a car that was really high coming off of turn 3 there.
Yeah, Robert Grosser, I believe. Grosser having a bit of a problem and is able to gather it up fair enough and slots in right behind Randy Shumate in the number 3 car. Meanwhile, we've got Mike Grandi and Andrew Aiken going wheel to wheel into turn 1, and let's see if Aiken's able to get in this position. He's gained a few off the start, let me tell you that. So we started P24 now up into P9 and gets a clean pass done over the 12.
And there's a lot of Aero X and Vortex sim racing drivers in this sort of battle that we've got going on here. We've got LaVille.
Of a recap of what's going on here, because we've got Bennett leading from Chin, from Egan, from Hoffman, from Dance. That is the top 5 breakaway that we've seen over the course of this race, and we've seen that a few times after the restart as well. So it seems to be the phenomena that we have here in the MKT Manufacturing Classic IndyCar Series, Indy 500. But of course, this mid-pack battle has been equally enthralling as well, as drivers tried to jostle for position, and well, Aiken's been doing a good job of trying to work his way through the field. Grandi has gone backwards slightly from where he started. Lucas LaVille, again, one of those drivers that sort of qualified out a position down in P23. Not where we're used to seeing really any of the Vortex Sim racing drivers, but they've been able to work their way through quite well. Stanley's there to help out his teammate of LaVille as well.
The other surprising thing for me is how little progress Jamie Wilson has made throughout the course of this race. His teammate Andrew Wood has come from the back as well, but the 2 Chimera drivers are running 15th and 16th. Meanwhile, Josh Chin is up in 2nd place, so it's interesting to see just how much better one of the Chimera drivers are compared to the other one. Similarly, Hoffman for Vortex is up in 4th, but LaVille, Stanley, and Gross are all back in this 10th through 15th battle here.
We are absolutely involved in the thick of things here as we head towards lap number 10 of the stint here. We haven't been able to get ourselves a full fuel green flag run here at the moment. It's always been around about that 15 to 20 lap mark where we have someone have an issue that brings out the yellow flag here. So we haven't had any green flag stops just yet here in this Indy 500, but there's still a long way to go and still plenty of chances for that to happen. Let's have a little check-in on that top 5. Bennett, Chin, Egan, Hoffman, Dance, all in that same order, all just quite content, I think, to just run as they are for the moment, because they are gapping the cars behind. Well, because of this, basically, Nate, Michael and Styles still going wheel to wheel.
Michael lost a little bit of time on the outside, as we saw, but he's fought back here, so he's got a strong car underneath him, and I think that really what needs to happen now is Styles and Michael need to start cooperating a bit more. If they're gonna have a position swap here, there's no sense in fighting it through the corner. You need to get the move done, and sort of, if you're the person being passed, you almost need to allow the move to happen. Otherwise, they're now 4 seconds back of that leading group, and it's only going to grow if they keep fighting.
It really is, and you've got to think big picture in this situation, and that's what they're failing to do at the moment, because all they're doing is slowing each other up and losing the front couple of cars. So if they want to keep themselves in contention for a race win here, especially if this goes long in terms of the green flag run, then it might be a detriment to try and be fighting it out too firmly at this very early stage. Let's have a look though. Mike Grandy, Lucas Laville going side by side, and let's see how this battle turns out, because again, Laville's on the charge through the field, looking to try and get one more position to try and establish himself inside of the top 10. Grandy's trying to defend this one rather well at the moment, is keeping himself at least level on the way across the Arda bricks. Turn 1 they go. Laville has that preferred inside line and is able to swing up ahead of Mike Grandy.
It's been a nice march through the field from Laville, and this is exactly what we've seen, or what we've seen a number of times from our former champion. Of course, he's now officially relinquished the number 1 and will relinquish the number 1 to Josh Chin at the end of this race. But it's been a season where Laville has really struggled in qualifying a lot, if I'm going to be honest, but he's marched his way forward throughout these races, and he's doing it again here today. It doesn't make for an easy day, because I've done similar things in my career, especially over in the Lionheart series. All really close between Aitken and Laville there.
Oh, I knew that was going to happen. As soon as I saw Stum on that low line with Laville, directly ahead of Laville, I knew there was going to be a whole bunch of dirty air that Laville had to deal with there, and all he was going to do was push up into the side of Aitken, and it almost ended in a huge instant there, but they're able to keep it all together and not have that big accident. Aitken able to get himself back past Laville here as Grandy fights it out with Stanley in the background there. We might even get ourselves 3 wide. Briefly heading our way down the pit straight here, and well, it's going to be Vortex Sim Racing versus these Aero X machines that haven't really been too successful in holding back the Vortex cars.
It's been definitely a back and forth battle for sure, and I think Laville probably has the strongest car out of all of this battle here, but that moment has really cost them. They've lost almost a second to Franzio Stum in front, and they're very right on the edge of losing their draft here, so they have to be very careful with this battle that they don't start to get another gap going here, because the more gaps happen, the harder it is to break through into the draft again, and the harder it is, or the further back you go, because you basically start getting a second gap here, and suddenly you find yourself 10 seconds back of the lead.
You do, and that's simply what you don't want to have happen. Currently, these guys are in and around just over, or well, in and around 7 seconds back from the lead at the moment. It's not an impossible margin to surpass over the course of 151 laps to go, but certainly not a small feat, especially when you don't have cautions to bunch things up. We might, there's always a possibility. I don't want to give it the curse of the commentator here at the moment, but there's always a possibility that we'll have 150 green flag laps all the way to the end here. You can't be necessarily relying on a caution coming out.
Absolutely. My first win in an Indy 500 was in the Indy Elite Series, and it was a 150 lap stint to finish the race. And the only reason I won it was because the fastest driver in the field had to make one more pit stop from everyone else. So it's so difficult to try and plan out a strategy this early on in the race, but you really do have to be on top of your fuel, and you have to be on top of where you are on the track in terms of your positioning. You can't afford to be fighting too much now, but you also can't afford to be wasting too much time behind drivers that you know you're faster than. So it's such an interesting dance and an interesting strategy battle at this point in the race.
And look at this, Marshall Stanley to the outside, at least briefly, just trying to find a little bit of clear air to get onto that front wing. Now he's able to get himself towards the inside of Attrition here on the run in towards turn 3. Let's see if he's successful in doing so. And Aitken's got to be careful not to allow Randy Shoemake an opportunity, and Shoemake does stick it down the inside there. So great opportunistic driving there from the driver of number 3, able to follow through on the car ahead and gain the position over Aitken. And Aitken now is out of the rhythm, he's out of the groove, and now risks losing a position not only to Grandy, but also Grosser as well. Ooh,
yeah, but you can see Aitken, yeah, he just chopped that nose down. He was not willing to let Grosser get a run on him there, because he knows just how strong those Vortex sim racing cars are right now. So he needed to stop that bleeding, and he did that with authority. Meanwhile, you see in the background there, the neon green 55 car, Jack Turner, he's starting to insert himself into this conversation. He's gotten around both of the two Team Chimera cars in Andrew Wood and Jamie Wilson, and Wilson is actually falling back through this field. So I wonder if Wilson's got a problem here, because he is just not happy with that car right now. Neither really is Andrew Wood. So very interesting that the Chimera drivers are suffering as much as they are right now.
Yeah, it seems like this is just the way the cookie crumbles here. Because that's, you know, if you get too many close altercations with the wall, sometimes you might just bump it a little bit. You know, not enough to cause major damage, but just enough. Oh, you can see how unhappy that Chimera car is, though, coming out of turn 2. That didn't look like a car that was comfortable of running in clear air or really any sort of air.
Oh, it looks like he's burned off the right rear a fair bit here, and it's probably he had a little bit of a push, so he put in a little bit more rear cross weight into it, and unfortunately what that's done is it's burned off that right rear, and he is just barely hanging on the exit of these corners right now.
Yeah, let's see the handling of the car. On the entry to turn 1, it's fine. It was the exit out of turn 2 that seemed to be the problem, at least on the last lap. But of course, like you said, he can make adjustments to try and deal with that, but you know, you're at the limit of the performance of the tyre again, almost gets into the outside wall.
And it's the dreaded pushy loose, isn't it, Connery? Yeah. Where it's pushing in the middle of the corner, but then you put more wheel into it, and then it snaps on exit. So you're putting too much wheel in, and then you're counter steering, and it's really, really difficult to drive a car under those circumstances.
And we're getting to that point where you know, this is the amount of laps in the tires where the yellow started to come out a little bit earlier. So halfway through these stints, seems, if we're taking this as a trend, it seems to be where the problem starts to develop. Remember, we've got about 35 to 38 laps on the tire, not on the tires, but on the fuel. That's the situation there. We haven't gotten to that point in any of these stints just yet, but this is the sort of danger zone here at the moment where drivers maybe start to lose performance in their cars. Whoa.
That was a near disaster from 2 out of the 3 cars, and nearly collected Robert Grosser there. And yeah, this is the point in the run, and what makes it so difficult is that your tires start to go away from you quickly. All of the abuse that you put into them, maybe not noticed quite so much because you had that life still in those tires. It's all gone away now. So suddenly you find yourself in a position that you're unfamiliar with, where for the first portion of this run it was handling a certain way. Now it's handling completely differently.
Look at the temp. Oh,
yep, we're 48. Up to 48.
Oh, that is spicy. It was 44 just about, 20 minutes ago. And now it's 48, and we're getting towards 1 p.m., so maybe there's another degree or 2 in it before it starts coming back down again. These are very, very tricky conditions, and especially when you have not too strong of a wind, but you know, a not insignificant wind. It was actually gusting around maybe. It was coming down here towards like 5 kilometers an hour, but it did go up to like 14, 15. So depending on the direction of that wind, that could also affect things.
Well, and to your point, it's the gusts that really are the problematic part for these drivers, because it does affect these cars. It will catch the car, particularly in certain corners. depending on which direction the wind's coming from, it can take the rear of the car, and where you were pushing the last lap, suddenly you're extremely loose, or the opposite, suddenly you went from loose to tight and you weren't expecting it, and that will contribute to some of these incidents that we've been seeing. It is worth noting, we haven't really checked in at the front of this field. We're looking at Jan Hoffman and Cameron Dance here, but Henry Bennett has really started to put a gap here on the rest of this field. He's got 1.5 seconds over Josh Chin and almost 2.5 seconds over Jan Hoffman in third.
Three-car fight for P8 as well. This is Marshall Stanley, it's Jack Stiles, it's also Randy Shoemake getting themselves involved here. Stiles trapped on the outside, allows Shoemake to dip his way down and in and get that clean pass done for P number 9 there. And there's not much Stiles can do about that. In fact, he might have just let that one go and just prefers to settle in behind these 3 cars here for the moment and make sure he can try and work on the field numbers, because this is the longest green flag stint we've had so far, getting to around 25 to 26 laps. So it's been good running, at least for this stint of the race, but can we get towards the end of the fuel tanks here to have our first green flag stops? That's what the drivers are going to be asking, that's for sure.
Absolutely, and it's all down to the drivers, particularly of the air-handling cars, whether they're able to keep it out of the wall here for the next 10 or so laps while they're just hanging on here. But we were watching this battle beforehand, but it was for that 12th position. Now, LaVille, Stanley, and Shoemake, they're 7th, 8th, and 9th, so their cars are really starting to come towards them. This Vortex sim racing chassis really looks like it's got the long run pace figured out here. And it's good to see Shoemake is probably the only Aero X car right now that's really been able to keep the long run pace up with the Vortex drivers.
For these drivers that's potentially are at risk of burning out their tires.
We just had an incident off of 2.
Oh, we did. That's Bobby Love. Oh, upside down.
We had 2, actually.
Aitken's also involved in it as well. We stay green here for the Indianapolis Indy 5, the Classic IndyCar Series Indianapolis 500 here. And, we're getting to see what happened here between Bobby Love and Andrew Aitken. There's Bobby Love coming off the circuit. Is he going to come back on? Yes, he does, but keeps it together and then loses off the corner. And Aitken has an unrelated incident. Oh, my word.
Yeah, so Bobby Love, he broke his rear suspension when he hit the wall coming through the short chute there. And unfortunately, you can't do much in that scenario. But Andrew Aitken, it's just one of those cases where, again, that pushy loose, he had too much wheel in it coming off the corner, and then the rear just settled and it hooked right on into that inside wall. Unfortunately, both of those drivers were far enough off of the track that we stayed green here.
Yep, indeed, we stay green, and we're continuing to charge towards the end of the fuel stints here. We're around about 8, 9, 10 laps away from getting our first visitors on towards the pit lane for green flag stops. Well, that could have so easily been another caution, and if you're unfamiliar with iRacing, the cautions don't tend to happen when cars are so far, having an incident so far off of the racing line. That tends to be the case. But as we've seen already in this race, sometimes it can be overly sensitive and call it when, even in real life, they would have stayed green.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a perfect sim, but it is a really nice sim in terms of caution and calling. I've definitely played sims where it's worse than this, so we'll take the iRacing cautions that we get here today. But Cameron Dance, he's really looking strong here, isn't he? His teammate Jack Stiles is under a lot of pressure here from Randy Shoemake. They've been having sort of a back and forth battle these last few laps as we were watching those replays here, but they've been going at each other. So one of the Orbit Motorsports cars is looking strong, but it really looks like Stiles, I think, has gotten behind on his tools just a little bit, because he's struggling through the middle of the corner right now.
Yeah, that does seem to be the case, and well, he has to deal with another maybe 7 laps, 8 laps on these tires, depending on how much fuel saving that he's been able to do over the course of this stint. So this is going to be a very, very tough stage, and maybe for these drivers that are on worn tires, as Stiles again has to try and defend on the outside from Shoemake, but Shoemake's going to send it down and in, and Stiles does tag the wall coming off the corner. That is so dangerous, because he can so easily have a little bit of suspension damage and ruin your wheel alignment, and that's you having to deal with that damage throughout the rest of the race, because that's something that can't easily be fixed.
Absolutely. And one thing to mention with this car, this is the IR05, so it really is a legacy car on the iRacing service, so it does not have the most up-to-date, newest damage models that some of the other Indy cars on this service do have. So what that means is the damage is a little bit less realistic, so some things that you might be able to get away with in real life, you don't get away with, whereas sometimes you can get away with stuff that you wouldn't necessarily get away with in real life on this car. So I think Jack Stiles was a little bit fortunate there with that contact that he made coming out of 2.
Very lucky indeed. Here's the battle for P15s between Hans Pitikanen and the Apprentices of Stone. These guys a little bit further down the field than perhaps where we're used to seeing them, but continuing to go on rather well, because again, it's 134 laps to go. There's so many things that can happen over the course of this race, and well, Turner and Grandi having a little bit of a fight ahead of them is certainly one of them. I do like that livery, the bright green number 55 car. But returning back to my point earlier that I completely failed to explain because, 3 times in a row because a battle happened. There's also, because we have dynamic weather here and dynamic skies, the cloud cover will come in and out, and if there's any extended cloud cover, that will help and cool the track down a little bit further. Of course, the drivers will have to do some readjustments to deal with that, but I think the drivers that are struggling with the tyres at the moment will find that very welcome.
Absolutely. There's never a bad time for a cloud here at Indianapolis. It just gets you a little bit more grip as Robert Grosser comes down pit lane here. First of the drivers to blink. Doesn't surprise me that Grosser would come down this early, try to get a little bit off strategy here. He's certainly well within the window of making it here. So I think good strategy call from Grosser. But to your point about the weather, it is definitely something that these drivers are having to be cognizant of throughout the course of their runs. And they really do have to take that into account when they're making adjustments, using their in-car tools. Oh, Chin spins on pit entry.
Oh no, he just hides himself behind the timing tower there on our view of things, but that's a scare you can't afford to have here in a race as significant as this one. I know Chin has already won everything in terms of championships, but this is a completely separate thing, isn't it? The Indy 500 win, and well, let's see what happens. Down on towards the pit lane. Oh, locks it up. I think maybe a rear lockup. That's all the signs of a rear lockup there on towards the pit lane, and very lucky to hold on to it.
Absolutely, and the problem is it might have even been a 3-wheeled lockup with the left front as well, which is the worst type of lockup because then only one of your tires is really doing all the braking. And it pitches you sideways like you saw there. And the reason that I say it's a 3-wheel lockup is because these cars do run really skewed to only turn left. So when you come down onto a flat pit lane like that, it's very easy to pick up the left front. And then if you also lock the rears at the same time, you are nearly certainly spun. And it took all of Josh Chin's skill to not spin out there.
Oh, that's a bit of an awkward angle there for Ilya Olia. You can see he's already putting in a lot of right steering lock to try and get that car away from the wall. It's a bit of an art to try and get yourself into the pit box at sort of the right angle in the right place to give your pit crew the best chance, but also to be able to exit the pit lane in more of an effective fashion. Ilya Olia, though, perhaps showing not quite how to do it.
Yeah, that little bit of an awkward angle, and that does mean a little bit of extra time spent from your pit crew. As we see, Henry Bennett is down from the race lead. He's on pit lane as well here. 11.1 second stop for Bennett, so a little bit longer, but he had a good almost 2-second lead over Josh Chin at the start of this, so he should be okay. That being said, Chin is actually really close to Henry Bennett coming out of pit lane here, so I think he lost a little bit more time than he was expecting.
Yep, and Chin's going to be he's going to have a huge amount of overspeed here coming down the back straight, and is going to be easily able to overtake and retake what will eventually be the race lead at the end of this pit stop cycle. So a fantastic outlap there for Josh Chin. Maybe not as good of an in-lap for Henry Bennett. Oh, someone's around.
Oh,
so that's Jack Turner. Jack Turner coming onto pit lane.
Yep, and it was a similar situation with Josh Chin, but unfortunately Turner was not able to save it, and he's got some heavy rear wing damage right now.
Yeah, let's see what happens to Turner. It's slowed down. Oh! Did he get collected from behind?
He might have. We're going to have to see another replay of this.
Look.
That was a strange one because there's no one really behind him. And it seemed like all was fine. And then
he shifted down.
it was a downshift. So very similar scenario as with Chin. Go ahead, Connery.
Wind it back there. Here's the sort of driver's visor view of it. Let's see if there's an awkward downshift. I mean, he's already in first there. What?
I think what happened is he tried to engage the pit limiter and it didn't actually engage. So when he hit the gas thinking that he was on the pit limiter, it spun him around because he wasn't prepared for the wheel spin. Then he made it worse by reversing back into the wall and destroying his rear wing. So it went from bad to worse there, compounding mistake on mistake for Jack Turner.
Oh yeah, because that usually when we see the revs increase by so much, it's usually a bit of a dodgy downshift. But no, that was like exactly as you mentioned it. That's a great explanation there, Andrew. Thinking potentially the pit limiter was on, and then nailing the throttle to try and get up to the pit lane speed, and just completely spinning the tires. That is, I'm pretty sure that's a mistake Jack Turner will never make again.
You only make those types of mistakes once, and then you're very, very careful to engage that pit limiter properly from then on.
There we go, 1:27 to go. We've got ourselves our first green flag stops here, and it is Joshua Chin, that is in the race lead at the moment after a fantastic pit stop sequence, able to overcome a couple of a second advantage that Henry Bennett was able to pull towards the end of that green flag stint. So Chin certainly straight back into things, and actually both of them have a 6.5 second advantage back to Cameron Dance at the moment, who actually had a similarly good pit stop phase. He resides in third place at the moment, but quite far adrift of the race lead.
And Chin and Henry Bennett are two of the best at getting on the pit lane, pit in, pit out. We saw the moment with Chin. I don't think he actually lost very much time with that moment there, Connery. And it's allowed them to really put a lot of space in between themselves and the rest of this field, but particularly Cameron Dance and Ethan Hagen. And I just think that these two, they've raced around each other for so long. They really know what each other are doing a lot on the track, and they do work well together even though they're on different teams. They understand that sometimes you need to have sort of some cooperation in the middle parts of this race, and I think that's what we're seeing between Bennett and Chin right now.
Indeed we are, and well, it might come down to these two at the very end of the race. I know it's very early to be saying such things, but again, if this goes green all the way, it's difficult to see anyone else challenging these guys at the moment, especially since Cameron Dance, he's in a bit of no man's land at the moment. He's got no help from ahead, and there's no one he can try and work together and slingshot off of behind. So he's running basically on his own out there, using all of that fuel. So not an ideal situation for Cameron Dance, especially if he has race win aspirations.
And to your point, both Bennett and Chin, what they understand is that it's very beneficial for them to be eliminating their competition, so to speak. So if it does stay green, if they can basically be focused on each other rather than focused on 4 or 5 cars behind them, it's going to make the end of the race much easier because all they'll have to worry about is the other driver. So it's definitely something that you take into account when you're going through this middle portion of the race, is you want to be trying to set yourself into a position to have as few competition as possible when you get to the end of it.
Absolutely. So as we are heading quickly towards the halfway point here, it's 23 laps until we get towards that point. We're in our second stint of this green flag run here. We've had our first green flag pit stops of the event, and the race shaping up to be a very, very good one indeed. We'll just take a moment here just as welcome into the commentary booth our other Classic IndyCar Series commentator that has joined us over the course of this season. It's DJ Clark. DJ, how's it going? It's Indianapolis 500 day for the Classic IndyCar Series powered by the Buttkicker, and we've had an okay one so far.
Yeah, everything looking like it's been able to stay pretty clean in green here as the gaps starting to form themselves out over the rest of the field. Good running and a beautiful day in Indianapolis. Great to be joining you and Andrew here. It is very, very exciting. Always one of my favorite parts of any Indy 500 is when you start to worry about that fuel strategy and trying to figure out all of those little intricacies.
Yep, indeed, and well, there's Mike Gandy. Actually, very short stop there. Very, very short stop indeed. I wonder if that was some form of penalty, or if he forgot to top it off with fuel, or take the tires, or something. Not sure what has happened there to Mike Gandy, because it was only a 5.4 second stop, Andrew.
Yeah, that's really puzzling. It's like he only took fuel, so I wonder if, as you say, maybe he had an issue where he just had reset his fuel to a lower number and then forgot to reset it again, and so he had to come back down pit lane and top off the fuels. That could definitely have happened earlier on, because we did have those two shorter stints that were about a half a tank each. So it could just be that he tried to purposely limit the fuel on one of those stops, maybe take a little bit lighter, and then forgot to reset the fuel to the appropriate level for the green flag stop there.
That could have possibly been the case. Just to sort of fill you in, DJ, on a couple of things that have happened over the course of this one. We've had a couple of weird incidents. We've had yellow flags that shouldn't have been yellow flags, because everyone kept themselves going at a good pace, and we've had yellow flags that potentially shouldn't have been. And that's the situation here. We've had two spins on the entry to pit lane as well. Yeah, there's been a lot of interesting things that have happened over the course of this one, and we're not even at the halfway stage just yet, and there's still a lot of intrigue in this race to go. We've even had a bold strategy call very early on from Nate Michael, who decided to not come down in on the first time of asking with that first caution, and actually it resulted in a pretty good situation for him, because he's up into P9 now after starting the initial start off the very back of the grid.
Well, it's always one of those things that if you're able to make that, let's call it a bit of a strange pit strategy work for yourself, sometimes you can find it coming out to play in spades. How many times have we seen at Indianapolis 500s in years past those bold strategy calls really being what comes to fruition farther on into the race? So Michael's clearly running well here with that place up into 9th place, a top 10. He'll be very, very pleased with that, and just going to have to keep it going here at this point as we focus in on Michael right now, leading away, getting through a little bit of lap traffic, and that obviously being one of the other big things that they're going to have to deal with here today as they run. But I've got to say, I like that call from the number 15. It may seem a little unorthodox, but clearly paying out in spades for him here at this point.
He really did, and to top it all off, he had a very lucky caution as well. And I was able to capitalize on all those positions gains, and he was able to hold on to a couple of those positions with the older tires, about 15, 16 lap old tires as well, which usually in IndyCar is not massively significant. However, with the weather conditions that we have today, you can see them on the right hand side of your screen, 46 degrees Celsius out there on circuit, and DJ, this isn't the highest we've seen it today either. We've seen it up in towards 48. So very hot conditions, very slick conditions out there, and definitely a struggle for these drivers at the moment.
Well, especially in these IRO 5s, these older cars, we talk about it so much that they like to slip and slide a whole heck of a lot, and that's not going to be helping their tire wear whatsoever around this 2.5 mile speedway here. Yeah, those temperatures can definitely oscillate a little bit, and a lot of that is going to be down to a lot of the wind direction. That's going to affect a lot of what this track temperature will be. Winds right now at about 4 miles an hour, so relatively low here for the moment, but certainly going to try to get their way back in, and we'll have to keep an eye on those temperatures. I can tell you I have been to many a 500 where that... Oh, yellow, 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 yellow.
Where's this happens then?
It's Robert Barncow.
Yeah, Barncow down on towards the pit lane. So another yellow here in the Classic IndyCar Series Indianapolis 500. Let's see what happens to Robert Barncow, because it doesn't seem like anyone else is involved in this one. Is it an issue coming off? Oh, it's an issue for out of turn 3. Oh, big impact. Oh, that was a Chimera car narrowly missing that.
Yeah, that was your second place runner, Josh Chin. He nearly got collected by Robert Barncow, and unfortunately for Barnicow, it was just he got high through turn 3 and he just never really had the car turning at all there. It was always just pushing towards the wall, and it happened right in front of Henry Bennett, and then you can see Josh Chin drifting through turn 4 in order to avoid that spinning car as it spears right across the racetrack in front of him.
Let's take a look at this on boards, because a brown trouser moment, I think, for Josh Chin. You'll see this incident happen right up ahead of him. He's hoping that car's going to stay down towards the inside, but no, it comes back onto circuit and loose as he tries to recover it. Oh, still loose, off all of the good, fighting the car all the way. Well held by your championship winner, DJ. That was sketchy.
That was sketchy, to say the least. Shades of Colton Herta and Alexander Rossi at Texas a couple of years ago. I don't know how Chin was able to hold on to that, but that is going to kick off a massive exodus down into pit lane. Pretty much everybody coming down in here at this point. And Joshua Chin, I dare say, as you said, Connery, probably going to need a fresh set of tires and a fresh set of pants after that incident.
Yeah, indeed. And well, Andrew, this comes at a time that seems to be cursed in this race. 15 laps on the stint again, for the 3rd time in a row, a caution.
Yeah, and this was not what Henry Bennett wanted to see. Oh, Josh Chin missed his pit stall. He had to back up. He's going to lose at least one position here. I think Ethan Egan might be able to get out in front of him here. It's going to be close, but I think Egan's got it. Yep, so that was a really costly pit mistake there from Josh Chin. He just slid through his box there. But I was about to say, this was not what Henry Bennett wanted to see, because he had put about 2 seconds on Chin and about 8 seconds on the rest of the field there. So unfortunate timing, but it's going to allow a number of drivers, I think, to make up a lap here as well. Particularly, I'm looking at Mike Grandy and Marshall Stanley here, who had a disastrous pit cycle. This is going to put them back on the lead lap again, so that's going to be good for their races.
Indeed it is. So getting themselves at least on the leading lap, and then you hope for a quick caution, DJ, and all of a sudden you can bring it down towards the pit lane, get the fresh tires and fuel, and you're on the same strategy as everyone else. That's the ideal situation that at least these cars that are going to get the lap back are hoping for.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're going to be hoping to be able to do here at this point, and that's one of the things of Indy. Many a time here off the restarts, it's a bit of a NASCAR phrase, but to steal it, cautions breed cautions, and so you're going to be hoping for another caution to bring you back down in here at this point and have that happen. Particularly, I think the second in line machine there having a little bit of damage on the back of the rear wing. They may need to spend a little bit more time in pit lane taking care of that. Interestingly, looks like a good chunk of them are going to stay out here, and so hoping for that second caution, going to get that wave around.
Yeah, so we're seeing Art McEwen remain out there towards the front and trying to get a lap back. He's in that yellow number 40. And Turner as well. Turner staying out there with a damaged rear wing. I don't know how. What's your assessment of that, Andrew? Is that going to handle well in the corners?
No, it will not. It will not handle well. He's been out there the last few laps slow, so I'm wondering if it's a little bit of a visual bug to a certain extent, because really it should have been replaced when he had that very long pit stop. So I'm wondering if there's a little bit of that old damage model bug going on there with the car of Jack Turner, the 55.
Essentially, pace car lights are out though. We're going to go green this next time by. Henry Bennett will be in charge of the race starts. Then Ethan Egan getting himself up into second place due to the mistake on pit lane from Joshua Chin, where he slid all the way through his box. And that is a cardinal sin, at least as far as I'm concerned here, especially when you have those big gaggle of cars come down on towards the pit lane for their pit stops. Go on.
And just quickly, what has happened to Cameron Dance here? From 4th position, he's now 14th. So I think he might have had something happen on pit lane there, caused him to have a long pit stop, and it's going to be a major issue for Cameron Dance in his quest from 4th place. And that's elevated Lucas Laville into contact with your leaders.
He's 47 seconds on the station on the pit lane. That's actually a little bit more than what would pit lane speeding be. So that's an interesting situation there for Cameron Dance. We'll have to try and investigate and try and find out what exactly happened to basically the rookie of the year, we'll call him at this point. But pace car lights are out, of course. They will dive down on towards the pit lane just momentarily. And then Henry Bennett will bring us back to the green flag here at Indianapolis. these race starts have been incredibly interesting because there's always at least one in the line that gets themselves a terrible start, and this time it was Randy Shoemake getting himself a little bit slow off the start and losing the back of LaVille.
And one of the reasons for that, Connery, is simply because of how difficult these cars are to accelerate. You saw it with what happened with Jack Turner on pit road earlier. It's just very difficult to get these cars spooled up without spinning the tires. So it's often the case where these drivers will be a little bit ginger on the throttle on these restarts simply to avoid having any incident.
Out for the race lead across the yard of bricks, though. Egan was briefly got him those into the race lead, and briefly again does so into turn 1. But Henry Bennett will be able to hold that one off. Joshua Chin on the outside looking in with LaVille in 4th place as well. Potentially looking for an opportunity to continue pressing on forwards here. But a little bit of a scrap for the race lead there. That's what we like to see, but with 111 laps to go, perhaps a little bit too early to be fighting for the track position here, especially given if you're at the very front of these trains, you're going to be using all the fuel, and that's not ideal if you're expecting long green flag runs.
No, it certainly isn't, and I wouldn't be surprised here if we see drivers like Chin, like LaVille, choosing to stay in line here at this point, and that indeed looks exactly like what is happening there. Egan, Chin, LaVille all backing off a little bit down the front straightaway. They certainly had the speed to go for the lead if they wanted to, but I wouldn't be surprised here if we see Henry Bennett in that 007 maybe backing off a little bit, trying to egg Ethan Egan or Joshua Chin into taking the lead to be able to do exactly that, save a little bit of fuel, try to keep himself back a little bit, as with still 110 laps to go, this is very much going to be a strategy game bringing its way forward.
And to your point, DJ, we're right in the middle of that strategy window where we had that pit stop. So if you're at the sort of 35, 36 lap end of fuel tank, then you can't make it on 2 more stops. But if you're at the 38 to 40 end of fuel tank, you can definitely make it on 2 more stops from here. So this is right in that window where fuel is going to be very important from here on out unless we get another caution.
It is. It really is. It's one of those times where things can potentially have the chance of getting a little bit more interesting. But having looked further back through the fields, Nate Michael and Jack Stiles. Now these are the 2 drivers. It feels like over the past 50 laps or so, they've been absolutely going wheel to wheel all the time, and are always within the same piece of real estate out there on the circuit. And it's going to be very interesting to see how the battle between these 2 develops, because that Orbit Motorsports car at times has looked pretty quick. But Nate Michael, of course, trying to defend from a very good strategy call that he made earlier on in the race, and has actually settled in quite well into that P7.
Yeah, and that's a bit surprising. Sometimes when you see those drivers that make that strategy call that's a little bit off kilter, a little bit off cycle, you'll see them struggle when they get to their way farther up in the field. But Michael here has done just a fantastic job. He's clearly got the speed and got the pace to be able to hold on to this. So I think that number 15 here may be a little bit of a dark horse. We haven't seen him necessarily up in front of the field, but I certainly think he could be on for a top 5 position here today if he keeps playing his cards right.
That could be what the result is for Michael at the end of this one, especially if things get a little bit spicier towards the very front and he can try and edge this gap back in. But that's more of a final stint thing than it is just before the halfway point thing. But having a look towards the very front of the field, they've all bunched up. They all kept themselves bunched up, excuse me. So Bennett, Egan, Chin, LaVille, and actually Randy Shoemake. Now getting himself involved in this one as well. Started P11 up into P5, and you have to... oh, yellow flag out there. Mike Grandy down on towards pit lane, and McEwen coming down in as well. He has to be careful with that, doesn't he? Because pit lane might have been closed when that caution came out, and he would have been stung with a penalty. But let's see what happened to Mike Grandy.
Very similar to the last caution that we saw there, where Grandy just gets a little bit high through turn 3 and he just can't get the car turned and it just sucks into the wall. Instead of spearing across, he was able to keep it up in the wall, and it looked for a moment that we were going to be able to avoid a caution, but because he came to a stop there on track, the iRacing caution does get thrown. And I think that you're right. I think Art McEwen will get a penalty here for being on pit lane at the wrong time.
Well, he was already on pit lane when the caution came out, so he should be fine. It wasn't like he crossed the yellow cones just after the yellow came out. So I think the 40 should be fine here, DJ, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. It looked like that was a pretty extended stop there for him. So I'm not sure if he will be served with a penalty or not. But my inclination here is no, that he should be okay. But this is going to re-rack and restack the rest of the field. And we talked a little bit earlier about some of those drivers trying to get their lap back. This is exactly what they were hoping for. Quick pit stop now that they can dive down into pit lane, get themselves back onto normal strategy. They're going to find themselves in good position.
Yeah, Stanley, one of those. The cruel thing is here for Ant McEwen, though, is he picked the exact wrong lap to come down in for his stop. I don't know whether he could have gone any more, depending on what the fuel tank was like for Art. But if he just stayed out one more lap, then he would have been able to at least come down in after this caution and then get himself another lap back. But that's not the situation. So now he's going to have to stay out there again and then come back around and. Hopefully, everyone comes down in and that's the situation. But we're seeing Henry Bennett, Andrew Egan, Ethan Egan, excuse me, Joshua Chin, Lucas LaVille, all in. Who's staying out here? Gross is staying out with 9 laps on the stint. Wilson is staying out with 9 laps on the stint as well. So this is an interesting split call here. A couple of drivers deciding they want to keep going. Well, if Nate Michael was able to make it work on 15-lap old tyres, Andrew, why not make it work on 10-lap old tyres?
Yeah, so I really like both of these calls here. If you're in the lead of this race, if you're in the top 5, top 10, you have to come down. Egan just barely able to get around Josh Chin there for second place and maintain that second. But if you're one of those leading pack cars, you had to come down here. Why? Because there was 105 laps to go. So that means 35, 35, 35. That's the minimum amount of fuel minimum amount of laps on each tank that we were talking about at the beginning of this race. That means that you're going full rich from here. If you're Robert Grosser, if you're Jamie Wilson, you've been mired back in the pack for so long in this race, dealing with dirty air, dealing with your tires not handling well because of that dirty air. Now you're going to be able to be at the front of this field. If you can get in the draft and stay in that leading pack, then it's worth the gamble of trying to extend your stint out a few extra laps here and potentially still being on the same strategy, but at least 5 or 10 positions up from where you were.
Since we are going towards the halfway point, it'll be prudent to say a big thank you to our sponsors that have joined us over the course of this season. Of course, we have the title sponsor, the Buttkicker. We heard from one of their representatives before the race and describing their products and, of course, their support of the Classic IndyCar Series. Thank you very much to MKT Manufacturing as well as the title sponsor of the Classic IndyCar Series Indy 500. MKT Manufacturing is a manufacturer of premier foundation equipment and was founded to meet the pile driving and drilling equipment needs of our customers who build the foundation of our nation's future. As partners with our customers, we strive to deliver on-time, high-quality, top-performing and cost-effective equipment for them to do their job well. For more, visit mktpileman.com. That's mktpileman.com for MKT Manufacturing. We also want to say a very big thank you to Extreme Scoring as well. They are our scoring partners here in the Classic IndyCar Series. If you're familiar with the Dan Lisa software of old, well, this is basically a new and improved and better version. So that's at extremescoring.info for all of your scoring needs. If you're a budding league administrator or if you want to transfer your existing system over to it, then they will definitely be helping you out there. And also remember, we have the Classic IndyCar Series Patreon as well. Thank you very much to all of these drivers and, well, they might not even be necessarily drivers, all of these people supporting the Classic IndyCar Series on Patreon, because these leagues aren't free to run. Everyone wishes that they were free, but they're not. So any support that is appreciated, any support will be appreciated, excuse me, and you can get your names up there on that particular graphic. We're about to go green once again here in this one in the Indy 500 for the Classic IndyCar Series. Let's take a breathe. Well, we had the opportunity to take a little bit of a breather there during that caution, all things considered. But let's see how this strategy call works out for the number 6 and for the number 87. The drivers that stayed out on that last caution. Robert Grosser will be the driver to lead this restart here as they round their way through turn 4. You can see the lap traffic also getting itself down towards the inside there, potentially not wanting to cause the lead lap runners too much of an issue. But we're about to go green once again in the MKT Manufacturing Indy 500 for the Classic IndyCar Series. Green flag is out. Robert Grosser off and away and has timed the restart incredibly well, gapping Jamie Wilson behind, and Bennett trapped behind a bit of lap traffic.
Yeah, it certainly looks like he is trying to work his way down to the inside there on Art McEwen. McEwen trying to do everything he can to stay out of the way here, Connery, but just a little bit in the way, and nevertheless, he's taken up some of that valuable draft, as now it's going to be Ethan Hagen that looks like he may be trapped behind coming down through 3 and 4. Joshua Chin is there, you see there. Oh, that's such a terrifying road to run. We've seen what can happen if you try to run a little bit high, but we're almost too wide up for the lead of the race.
Oh, well, not quite the lead of the race. It's second place here at the moment because Grosser has gapped these guys by about 3.4 seconds. 3 wide briefly there with Ethan Hagen in the middle as Joshua Chin sends it down the inside of the lap traffic of Art McEwen. Gets that position done. Well, it's not really a position, but gets the track position over the bit of lap traffic there. Art McEwen, of course, well within his rights to try and fight these positions. He's just not making too many friends out there in amongst the lead lap cars.
No, he's certainly not. This is not what you want to see if you're the lead lap car. You're trying and begging Art to fall to the end of this draft train and let the leaders sort of battle it out amongst themselves. But I think the big story is just how big a gap that's caused Robert Grosser to have here, because it's 1.2 seconds back to Henry Bennett right now, and that's going to allow Grosser to really get out of the draft, and it's going to make sure that Bennett and Chin and the like doesn't have a good draft here where they thought that they might have.
Yep, that's the situation there, and Art is continuing to cause problems here for the lead lap cars. Even Hagen getting towards his inside. This is not a battle for position, but it might as well be with how hard these guys have been fighting. Down to the inside goes Hagen. LaVille trying to follow through in his tyre track. Same with Andrew Wood in the Team Chimera car as well. He'll get himself alongside McEwen and gets that spot gained. At least in terms of the track position. Now Schubig looking to try and do the same as well. He'll angle towards driver's left-hand side coming down the pit straight. Not got an overlap on the way in towards T1 and risks getting his nose cut off.
Oh, that was almost too close for comfort there, but Art, I think, recognizing a little bit that those drivers were coming on through, that is causing a little bit of a stack up there behind Jack Stiles, Nate Michaels, Cameron Dance, trying to be able to work their way on through. Michaels there that you can see on your screen. Michael, rather, trying to be able to get his way through. Almost 3 wide coming down through 3. This is getting all kinds of hairy.
Cameron dancing the wall. He's able to gather it all up. I don't know how much damage is on that number 88 car. He might try and pull it down pit road. No, he's going to continue still out there. Wilson and LaVille and Hagen all fighting it out here. Hagen at the front of these 3. Wilson trapped on the outside and losing a bit of ground. He's got his teammate of Andrew Wood behind, which will be a small respite, but that was so close to another yellow.
And unfortunately for Cameron Dance, that was all inexperience and impatience there that caused that. He tried to take it 3 wide through turn 3, which is never a good idea. You can see he's battling with his teammate Jack Stiles and the number 15 car as well. And then Art McEwen, he's slow on the outside, and then Dance is just so far in the gray that when you're up that high, there's just no grip at that point, and he was just a one-way ticket into that outside wall.
Yeah, and he's going to have problems with the right-hand side of that car. Look at him, he's crabbing. Look how much he's crabbing. This is reminiscent of, again, Indianapolis, just a couple of rounds ago, except we were on the road course. I was able to nurse this car all the way home. I doubt that's going to happen on the oval, though.
Yeah, unfortunately, the oval is a little bit of a different beast, and while you can get away with the crab on the oval, apparently, according to Cameron Dance, you cannot get away with the crab here, and I think he's probably going to find himself pulling down on a pit lane sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he has a meatball flag as well. Yeah, he does, so he will have to bring that car down on towards the pit lane. He hasn't got a choice unless he stays out there for 3 laps and get himself disqualified. So there we go. Down on towards the pit lane he comes. He has to be careful on the brakes still, but I doubt he'll be able to get this car back in working condition, I guess, at least safe enough to remain out there. So this might be a retirement for Cameron Dance. Meanwhile, at the front of the order, that gap has been gobbled up by Henry Bennett, and Grosser's coming under pressure now.
Yeah, Grosser coming under pretty extreme pressure there, and you saw that wide line that he took coming down through turn 4. A little bit of a shallower line there for Henry Bennett, and Joshua Chin now onto the back of this conversation as well. So we are back into position here. I think Grosser maybe driving a little bit more defensively, letting that car run up wide a little bit more, taking a later apex into the quarter. I think he's thinking about trying to save his tires here a little bit, and Bennett looking very, very aggressive, maybe trying to want to push his way forward.
Yeah, continuing to push his way forwards here. It's a great opportunity for Grosser to try and capitalize on this strategy call. He's hoping for another quick yellow, which with how these guys have been racing, might not be too far away if this sort of behavior continues. So just keep an eye out for that. We got 95 laps to go, so just shy of half the race as Henry Bennett heads his way down the inside at turn 1, and Chin is going to try and crack open the inside here as well, trying to get himself up into that second place. He can't afford to get trapped up behind Grosser here, especially if Bennett wants to try and pull away, and that's an important pass there for Chin. If he got trapped behind Grosser for another couple of laps there, Henry Bennett's already shown he can break away in the clear air.
The big thing now here is how will Grosser handle this dirty air on those older tires? Will he be able to stay with Bennett and Chin? Because don't forget, he does have to extend this stint out a fair bit longer than these other drivers here. So being in the draft isn't the worst thing, but it'll only work if he's able to keep the car underneath him and keep close to the cars in front of him. Meanwhile, one thing that has been creeping up, one driver that's been creeping up throughout this entire race and is knocking on the door of a podium, Lucas Laville in that number 1 car from 20, I believe it was 24th on the grid. He has worked his way steadily through this field, and he is about to introduce himself into this conversation for the win as well.
Indeed he is, and well, for our previous championship winner, Lucas Laville, it hasn't been the most ideal season, it's probably fair to say. But however, that can all be remedied, or at least most of it can be, by an Indy 500 win. That's, I feel, in some cases, is almost at the same level as a championship win.
Oh, it certainly is, Connery. You talk to anybody driving out here, if they'd rather have a championship or they'd rather have an Indy 500, and it's going to take them a long, long moment to be able to think about that. As here we see Laville closing down on the back of Grosser. Is he going to make a little bit of a peek down into turn 3? No, he's going to stay in line here. I'm liking what I'm seeing here.
Nate Michael, I think Nate Michael might have had a problem. We stay green, but Nate Michael taking the tow back to pit lane, out of turn 4. Let's see what the replay shows. He's embroiled in a little bit of a battle here. I think this is with Styles once again in the iconic car on the outside. Let's see. Oh, he gets very low through turn 4, and it spits him out and hard into the barrier. Ooh.
The curb in turn 2 bites again there, Connery, and it was just one of those unfortunate incidents. I think Nate Michael, again, he was trying to be a little bit too aggressive for this stage of the race. Got this battle going on right before him, and he sees an opportunity here where Styles had a little bit of a bobble, throws himself to the inside, but then he's stuck here. He's trying to figure out some clean air, and he gets a little too low, hits that apron, and just pitches the car right around on him. And we saw it earlier, and we're going to see it again. You cannot hit those aprons and those rumble strips on the inside of the corners like that.
Yeah, you simply cannot. And, well, that's another incident that could have easily been another yellow. That's what Grosser would have been hoping for, that's for certain. But unfortunately for him, it was too far off of the racing lines for the iRacing automatic system to be able to call the yellow here. So we stay green with 90 laps to go. 14 laps on this green flag stint at the moment. So that's the situation that we have, and need I remind everyone that it seems to be 15 or around about 15 laps through the stint, then we get another caution. So let's get through this danger zone.
Yeah, let's try to get through it indeed. I want to see how these drivers are going to be able to fare with tires starting to get a little bit warning. As Styles and Wilson having a little bit of a battle farther back in the field. Looks like the number 59 able to pull ahead there at the moment. Ooh, as there they go. And those temperatures continuing to rise up here, Connery.
49 degrees Celsius. That is incredible. And for those that do temperatures in old money, that's 120 Fahrenheit. That is, that is a scorching track temperature, and it's not going to help. It's not going to help these drivers with the grip that they have out there here today, and it might spell trouble, especially coming towards the end of the stints. I've only seen track temperatures in the 50 degrees plus a handful of times.
Oh, Chin in the wall. Chin hit the wall coming out of 2 there.
Now comes under threat from Lucas Laville down in towards turn number 3 here. Let's see if Chin still has performance in that car, if it's not damaged at all. He does let Laville go. It looks a little nervous on the outside of turn 3. Let's see through turn 4 if that car is okay. He angles off the corner, down on towards the pit lane. Chin having to take an unscheduled stop due to damage.
Oh,
Just
what a
disaster.
heartbreak.
See how it happens.
And it just walks up the track, doesn't it? He started a little bit loose in the corner, and he had to catch the rear of the car just a little bit, and when he did, it just got him off of his line, and it just brushes that wall ever so slightly, but it's just enough to destroy that suspension alignment on that car.
Indeed it is. Up on the jacks he goes, might as well take the fresh tyres as well. That is, again, it's an easy mistake to make. We were just talking about the track conditions, 49 degrees Celsius. That will not help the pushing off the corner whatsoever. And Chin just biting off more than he can chew. Thankfully, though, for him, it seems to be only a 14.6 second stop. And he actually does not remain on the leading lap here, as Henry Bennett's already just gone through on this one. This is not an unrecoverable position for Chin. And if someone's going to be able to recover something from this race, it would be him. But it depends on if that car is okay after, what, about maybe 5-6 seconds worth of damage repair?
Yeah, and I'd be wondering a little bit, obviously he's probably with 5-6 seconds of damage repair. My guess is that's probably a change on the front nose, but my concern would be on that right suspension to see what would happen with that. And you'll be able to tell pretty much immediately, and Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but you'll be able to tell not necessarily if the car is steering in the right way, but you'll notice that you're just going to be down a couple of miles an hour courtesy of the car. It looks like it's steering straight there, and as we take a look here at Chin, looks like he's okay, but he could just be down ever so slightly, and just a little bit of damage on these Indy cars is enough to be able to throw you off and put you out of contention.
And there's also the mental aspect as Chin actually comes down, so it looks like he's got a little bit more damage than he was hoping for, so I think he might be just retiring this car at this point, because he'll know immediately whether his prospects of the win have gone away, and having already won the championship, I don't blame him not wanting to spend 85 laps driving an ill-handling car around here, because this is one of the tracks where if your car is not handling well, you do not have any fun whatsoever.
Back into the pit lane. Does he jump out of the car? Looks like he's remaining in there for now. So he might have done a little bit of optionals and decided to get back out there. But now he's coming back in, feeling that, okay, the car's not totally fixed. I'll take the rest of the optionals and I might be able to get back out there. So yeah, another 16.5 second stop here for Chin. This definitely puts him in a very awkward situation. Now 2 laps down on the race leader. So if it was slightly recoverable before, it's definitely not really now.
Yeah, for sure. This is day done for Chin in terms of the win, and now it's just a matter of will the car be good enough to drive that he's able to complete these laps. Meanwhile, this puts Henry Bennett in the catbird seat, but Lucas Laville is now suddenly finding himself in second position, just 1 second back from your leader. And Laville is one of the drivers, and the Vortex setup in general, if there's one driver who seemed to be able to keep the tires under him for as long as Henry Bennett, it was Lucas Laville in the early stage of this race. So we're going to have to see here in this next stint whether that remains the case, but I would definitely put my money on Lucas Laville still mounting a challenge. This is not going to be a cakewalk for that 007.
And DJ, a little bit of cloud cover coming in as well will give those tires a bit of respite.
Yeah, already dropping down a few degrees here as it comes in this May day in Indianapolis. The weather very, very dynamic here. That wind staying about where it was here at this point, but that cloud cover, I'm already seeing about 5 degrees of Fahrenheit of change dropping down right here. So that is certainly going to be helping these tires here a little bit more, and will probably mean that these drivers are able to push just a little bit more on it. They'll be keenly aware of exactly what the temperature is, how it is changing, and how they are able to keep going along. So rest assured that they know exactly what that is going to be, and their teams will be in their ear about it if they don't have a heads-up display that's telling them.
Indeed. We've got 81 laps to go of the Classic IndyCar Series, powered by the Buttkicker MKT manufacturing Indianapolis 500s. It's Connery Maddock with Andrew Kinsella and DJ Clark here on the commentary. And, well, Henry Bennett as the race leader here at the moment by 1.3 seconds. Back to Lucas Laville, who's been on a charge throughout this race. We have to remind everyone that Laville started in 23rd. So, just a row or so, but you know, towards the very back of the field. Henry Bennett, well, he started on the front row. Remember, we had 3 abreast as a start here, as is traditional in the Indianapolis 500. But still, this is a great performance so far for Laville. He's made all of the right calls at the right time and has been able to work his way through the field. And now he's in a position where he can see Bennett down the road. Won't necessarily be getting his slipstream at this point, a little bit too far back for that. But he's in the position now we can start to think about the possibility of a race win challenge. And that's all the encouragement you need sometimes.
Absolutely. There's nothing better than having the driver that you're hunting down squarely in your sights. So for Lucas Laville, what he's doing right now is he's just concentrating on hitting his marks every single lap. He'll be monitoring the gap in his relative and making sure that he's not letting Henry Bennett get too far out. It does look like Henry Bennett's maybe half a tenth a lap quicker, but it's not a big gap, and that's something that can easily change over the course of a long stint, particularly as the tires go off. So if you're Laville, you're just sort of stalking, monitoring, and seeing where you're fast versus where Henry's fast and what you can do to maybe shorten up that gap just a little bit as the stint wears on.
Indeed. And, well, it's going to be very interesting to see how this race ebbs and flows from this point forwards, because we've had a decent amount of retirement, shall we say. We've had Lewis Woodall, who actually didn't seem to take the starts there. We had Joshua Tucker. We had Sebastian Kinder, Patrick Sevassi. We've got Jonathan Diggs, Andrew Aitken, Bobby Love, Rian Hoffman, Robert Bonko. We got Mike Ranzi, Cameron Dance, Nate Michael, all out of this race. We only have 15 cars running out there, compared to 27 off, well, 26 if you count Lewis Woodall that do not start. That's got themselves to the green flag here at the very start of the 200 laps. So less cars out on circuit means potentially less chance for a caution. So again, good chance of going green all the way to the end here. Meanwhile, battle for P10 on. Vesa Ilya Olja versus Hannes Pikkanen. So these two having a little bit of a ding-dong battle for P10, and Vesa Olja getting himself up into that top 10 position. Pikkanen, of course, keeping himself in this race, actually. He's done very well having a very, very quiet event, and he's kept himself in it. And with the rate of attrition that we've had, that's generally all you need to do to gain positions, it feels like.
Yeah, and that is, frankly, a good strategy to have here at a full-length Indianapolis 500 is just kind of keep yourself in position, get yourself working ahead, try to focus in on the car a little bit and get maybe some tweaks onto the car, some tire pressure adjustments as you come down into pit lane. It's a strategy that Rick Mears used to always do. Was that a brush with the wall, or was that a loose moment there, Andrew?
That was a brush with the wall for Pikkanen there, and unfortunately it does look like he might have just bent the rear suspension just a little bit there, DJ. So it was just a little bit too much aero wash there, I think, and it just caught him out, got a little bit loose, walks it up the track just like we saw with Josh Chin, and it doesn't take much to bend that rear suspension.
So yeah, that was the brush with the wall. Actually does now on the live pictures. We'll return to it. There he is, behind the timing tower once again. Pikkanen down on towards the pit lane to try and get that damage repaired. Another victim of the Indianapolis 500 down in towards that pit lane, and doesn't look like there's wing damage, so suspension damage is going to be trickier to repair, if at all being able to repair, as things might be. Grosser has also decided to come down in, though that was more of a scheduled thing for him, given that he stayed out on that last stop.
The key here, Connery, is look at how many laps to go. So that's 74 laps to go. So if I'm doing my math correctly, that is just in the window. He needs to go 37 from here in order to make it to the end. So he just has barely made it into the window to make it on one more stop.
Yep, that's the margin that we're thinking about, because it was, well, we were looking at a fuel window depending on draft fuel saving capability and things like that, 35 to 39. So yeah, it's that bang in the middle of that window. So possible, definitely possible for him to make it to the end on one more stop, and that will be important given that we're again at a low likelihood of yellows appearing before the end of this race. Although again, I have to be careful about that because the curse of the commentator is a thing. But Jamie Wilson deciding to head his way down in and now.
Yeah, that's going to be him bringing the car down. Another one of those drivers that opted to stay out there as we take a look as Jack Turner is going to be bringing the car out of pit lane. And with, as Andrew pointed out earlier, that visual glitch for the Aero X Racing number 55 that we believe is on the rear wing of that car. Just that car is not as crumpled as it would appear to be. But everyone continuing to go around here. This is one of the longer runs we've had under green today. They continue to try to see if there is anything left to go. We're on lap 32 of this stint, so expect drivers that haven't been doing a lot of fuel saving to probably come in. Ooh, is that's another car in the background, maybe getting a little bit close and friendly with the wall as the Esabila Olila coming down into pit lane.
Ilya Olia in. The rest of the drivers, well, they're on about 32, 33 laps on their stint, but could really come down in at any point inside this window now to be able to make it on one more stop. So they have a bit of wide discretion here to decide when they want to come down in. Of course, it depends on whether they want to try and pull off an undercut on the cars ahead, because we've seen that be prevalent today because of the high tire degradation.
Yes, and this is an interesting dynamic that we have here. Robert Grosser on the new tires is right behind his teammate Lucas Laville. So how much of a wingman will Robert Grosser be here? And if you're Vortex Sim Racing, what's the strategy call here? Do you want Grosser on the faster tires to come around Lucas Laville, maybe tow him up to Henry Bennett just a little bit, or do you want Grosser staying behind Laville, maybe saving some fuel for Grosser and getting that fuel number a little bit easier? So some interesting stuff here with some altering pit strategies on the same team.
Indeed. Well, Grosser is going to stick in behind for now and let Lucas Laville do his own thing. But, I mean, Laville is due down on towards the pit lane. It's around about 35 laps at this point, so the fuel running a little low, especially if Bennett's been running in a large amount of clear air, which he has done so, to be fair. So he might come down in just a little bit earlier because of the fuel numbers, but no, he does decide to stay out at least one more lap here, coming up towards 69 laps to go. There we go, we see it tick over. Again, Grosser in behind as well. So this is an interesting, like you said, it's an interesting dynamic between these two multi-cars.
Yeah, very interesting dynamic, and just seeing that strategy play, I like the call from it. I like seeing the two of them running like this together, being a little bit heads up as they go. And this is frankly a lot of what we see in Indy. If you're able to run with a teammate, how many times have we seen that swapping back and forth, that ability to go? So there we take a look. Track temperatures eking their way up once again as we go a little bit further in the day. You mentioned that cloud cover a little bit earlier, Connery. Looks like it's rolling away here at this point, and track temperatures starting to rise once again.
Indeed, we've seen as high as 49, 48, heading there as well. Meanwhile, we have Shoemake and Stanley coming down and in, and Wood also in the background in the Team Chimera car, also deciding that now is a pretty good time to come down in and get your, what will be a penultimate stop here. So after this, these guys will have one more stop to go, ideally, if we don't have a yellow flag that sort of throws the spanner into the works here. But these guys getting their second to last service done. Randy Shoemake coming off the pit lane, 11.2 seconds on his particular stop, side by side with Marshall Stanley coming off the pit lane, and Stanley's going to lose out in this one because he can't really go too wide through the exit road.
No, you can't, and unfortunately, Stanley was the driver on the worst end of that. But your top three are now in: Henry Bennett, Ethan Egan, and Lucas Laville, all down pit lane this time by Laville with the first pit stop, or one of the first pit stalls, and Bennett with one of the last. So we're going to see a little bit of a drag race here, potentially coming off pit lane. Bennett's holding and holding. He has a little bit longer stop than Lucas Laville, and that's going to get Lucas just that little bit closer. And if Lucas can get into the draft of Henry Bennett on this access road, that's going to be huge for his hopes for the final 2 stints of this race.
So 67 laps to go. You would be able to split lap 34 and 33. So that's the situation. That's if you want to split evenly, of course. But, you know, would it be in the driver's minds here, Andrew, to try and do something a little bit different to splitting it evenly? Or, you know, trying to maybe maximize this particular stint and then have a fresher tire advantage towards the end?
Yeah, so if I'm Lucas Laville, I might have tried to underfuel the car just a little bit there, try and get in the draft of Henry Bennett and get the track position that way. If I'm Henry Bennett, what I'm doing is the opposite of that. I'm going to go as long as I possibly can on this stint, have as light a fuel fill on the final stop, and have as fresh a tires and as low lap count of tires as possible at the end of this race. So I think what you're going to see is Bennett going as long as possible, and Laville maybe coming in right around that lap 35 area.
Indeed, and well, let's see where Grosser files out in this one. He actually files out in third place, about 4 seconds behind his teammate of Lucas Laville. So that's the situation there. Not too shabby for Robert Grosser. He does have to be a little concerned about Ethan Egan behind, because he's definitely secured within his slipstream at the moment and has a very, very good run on this particular lap. So he might have a bit of action to be concerned about coming towards the final. Well, we're sort of towards the final third of this race now, and things are going along quite well for both Laville and Grosser here at the moment. Grosser, of course, making that strategy call on one of the previous cautions to remain out there, and it seems like it has rewarded him once again, because he, similarly to everyone else, has to make that one extra stop, albeit having to take a bit more fuel.
Yeah, and just taking a little bit more fuel on that run. We'll have to see how that plays out for him here at this point. A little bit of close running here as we see Stanley and Shoemake maybe trying to get themselves into a little bit of touch-and-go battles as they work their way around. I'm going to be interested to see here. We can see a little bit of poke going down into the first corner. Nope, they're going to stay themselves in line as there is Egan and Grosser up in front as well. Close battles certainly starting to play themselves out here at this point. Plenty of time left to go, though, in this race. Plenty of time left to make these moves.
Indeed there is. And, well, 64 to go. So we're looking, if you want to in time on a green flag run, we're looking around about 43 minutes before we get the checkered flag out there. So that's the time that we're thinking about here at the moment. We potentially might... with the lap traffic, get a little bit of free wide action here. Marshall Stanley getting himself just about, oh, that's sketchy on the way in towards turn number 1, fighting it out with Shoemake here. This is about P5 out there on circuit, and let's see if Stanley's able to hold that one on the outside. Gets the good run off of turn 2 as well. Shoemake has no choice but to duck back in, potentially get a slipstream, and potentially go to the inside of turn 3. But no, he thinks better of it. Stays in line with that Camaro car also in behind.
It's so weird to see Josh Chin as a lap down car and an Indy 500, but he is 1 lap down, and he will be going another lap down when he comes into the pits in a few laps. But with that move from Marshall Stanley there, that puts 3 Vortex Sim Racing cars in your top 5. So it was not looking like a very promising day at the beginning of this race, but this is a lesson to all of the rookies in this field. The veteran team of the Vortex stable, it really shows how much patience and strategy really plays into Indy 500 races with the just over 50 laps to go, having 3 of the top 5 right now.
Yeah, it's an incredible performance from that particular outfit. It's, again, no easy feat here when we talk about Indianapolis 500s. No matter if it's in these older cars or if it's in the modern ones, you know, it's the same sort of racing, isn't it? It's still an Indy 500 at the end of the day, no matter what era of machine that you decide to take part in it in.
Yeah, exactly, and it still presents the same challenges. You're going to have a little bit of different tire wear, a little bit of different fuel wear, depending if you are in the DW12s, the IR18s, or these IR05s, but it is still that same strategy, and as you mentioned earlier, Connery and Andrew, it is still all about patience. You cannot be greedy here at Indianapolis. This is a track that really and truly favors that calm, cool, and collected approach that we always talk about as you try to work your way through the field. If you try to be a little bit too greedy, try to be a little bit too over-aggressive, it's going to come back and bite you. You have got to let this race come to you, and if you try to push it, that is a one-way ticket to find yourself into problems.
Track temperature back up to 49 degrees, so the hottest that we've, well, tide hottest that we've seen all day. So, you know, it'd be very interesting to get these drivers' perspectives on that after this race is done in the interviews, because these are not the easiest conditions whatsoever, and the fact that we still have, you know, a good handful of cars still running and haven't had an altercation with the wall is certainly a feat that should be commended. But with this battle for P5 still between Marshall Stanley and Randy Shoemake, Shoemake still not tempted to send it down and in into any of these corners. But might just be deciding that he wants to try and play the fuel game a little bit and sit in behind, drafting off of that Vortex Sim Racing car ahead of him. I definitely wouldn't complain, especially since we are, after this little stint, well, not little stint, but after this stint, we'll be coming up on the final stop of the race.
Absolutely, and we're coming up on another milestone which drivers of the 500 really understand, is the 50 to go mark. And really, if you're a veteran of the Indy 500, you understand that you don't really start pressing and you don't really start going until at least that 50 to go mark. Until then, it's all about just positioning yourself and being patient, as we've talked so much about. But once you hit that 50 to go, then you start to turn up that aggression just a little bit. Then when you hit the final pit stop, it's full on from there. So we're right getting into that window here where we might start to see a little bit more aggression, and we might also start to see some more mistakes happen. So this is where you might see a late caution come out, is when the aggression starts to get turned up.
Indeed, and well, that's just because the drivers can see the finish in sight. They start to feel the time pressure to try and get past cars ahead of them. And that's when the mistakes start to set in as well. But having a look at Randy Shoemake here, again, has a little bit of a run down the pit straight, but decides that he wants to lift and coast and make sure the fuel number's in the right place. And it doesn't help that Robert Grosser has dropped back into this battle somewhat. Of course, he is on 6-7 lap older tyres than these guys, which is not usually a massive factor, but again, with the conditions that we had today, it becomes more of an important one as Stanley heads his way down the inside of his teammate. Let's see if Grosser can file back in line. Oh, Shoemaker's just about got a nose in there for 3, but can't convert it into 4.
No, not able to make it work there, and some good discretion being showed from Randy Shoemake. You saw that just sort of natural instinct for him to want to try to get on by, but the AeroX Racing driver opting to hold back into line. Now going to poke his nose up onto the higher line, taking the later apex into the corner. That's a way to get some fresh, clean air on the front of that wing. Some good heads up here from Randy Shoemake to be able to go. Let's see if he tries to follow here going down into turn 3. This is where we saw Stanley be able to make that move last time. Well, it looks like there the two teammates up ahead are going to be able to lock that down. And I think Shoemake here is in maybe just in a little bit of wait-and-see mode. He's not looking like he wants to attack full sail here at this point, just holding back the best of his ability.
I do think that this is a little bit strategic from Robert Grosser as well, because remember, he's on the 237 lap stints to end this race, so being behind his teammate Marshall Stanley here, that's going to be a big advantage when it comes to saving a little bit of fuel. And I think that he's also acting as a buffer between Stanley and Shoemake here, and giving his teammate a little bit of breathing room for the drivers on the same strategy.
Always a thought process behind everything that happens out there on circuit, at least for these drivers in this event. And Shoemake deciding that, well, just has to play a little bit patiently here, like you said, sitting behind his teammate, getting that fuel saving done. But having a look elsewhere out there on circuit right now. We just had Joshua Chin, well, he's coming off of the pit lane right now, so another little stop for Chin, which is not ideal. And well, it was looking very, very positive for him in the early portions of this race, but with a mistake, and having not just the big mistake that he had, but also the troubles on pit lane as well. It's been a one to forget for him. And when you consider the Oval Championship is undecided, whereas every other championship has gone its way, maybe one that's not really needed. But given that we've had a lot of retirements over the course of this race, he might still be okay in that department, but we will have to check.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see if he's going to be able to hold on to that. Never trust the commentator's math. We may have to wait until the end of the race to be able to figure that out.
Especially mine's been notorious to be being awful. You haven't seen me trying to work out a strategy in endurance racing.
Indeed, I haven't, but I can tell you that I have made some pretty terrible mathematical decisions when I'm on air. So at this point, I know what the fuel strategy numbers are. Outside of that, don't ask me to do championship standings, because that is a one-way ticket to destruction.
This is why me and you, DJ, are primarily played by player commentators, because we can't do maths.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, we're relying on Andrew here as the experienced IndyCar driver who knows these cars and this type of racing inside and out to give us the expert knowledge. Me and DJ just going, yes, there are race cars and there's a battle.
And even then, my math is only accurate about 75% of the time, so what can you say? It's one of those things where, because you run a lot at Indy, if you're an IndyCar driver, you do understand the ebbs and flows of the strategy here more than most. You have the numbers sort of burned into your mind and the laps that you have in your mind that you need to get to in order to make a strategy work.
Coming up to 50 to go, though. Grosser and Shoemake going wheel to wheel. And, well, it has allowed Stanley to slightly break away from this pack. So Stanley going along very, very well, although doesn't have any sort of assistance from his teammates here at the moment, as Grosser is still stuck behind Shoemake here. And, well, we'll see how this affects things in this battle for these couple of top 5 positions. But, all these drivers are doing at the moment is trying to set themselves up for that final stop. Whenever that may be, some that might decide to come down in at the very, very beginning of being able to get towards the end, so they can get maybe a little bit of an undercut on the fresher tires, which have been pretty important here today. But like was mentioned before, if you're in the race lead, for example, you might want to try and extend this one as far as you can go.
Yeah, I think that could be the strategy call here, to just try to give yourself as much breathing room as possible, but it's going to be one of those sort of great unknowns that we're not really going to have an idea of what they do. Andrew, I'm interested to see what your strategy call would be if you are up in the lead of this race. Are you coming in early, or you coming in late?
I'm going in as late as possible if I'm Henry Bennett, because right now he's fairly confident that he has the fastest car, that he can pass anyone that he needs to at this point. He's passed Chin before, he's passed Nate Michael before on track, he's passed Ethan Agan on track. He knows that he can pass. Having the tire advantage and the lighter fuel is going to be so important in the late stages of this race, particularly if there's any type of restart or anything like that. So I'm going as long as possible if I'm Henry Bennett. Lucas Laville, on the other hand, I'm coming in a little bit early. I'm trying to get as close as I possibly can to Henry Bennett, and maybe trying a little bit of an overcut using the draft and seeing what happens later on in the race. So there's definitely a lot of different ways to slice it, and it really depends on your circumstance.
Don't tempt the caution. don't tempt it. It's a forbidden word on the broadcast from this point forwards, I get the feeling. But yeah, ideally we'll have one more green flag stop to go, and then it's going to be a straight up run to the end. But who knows what might happen late on in this event, and that will potentially be something that will shake things up by a huge amount. Because right now, it looks like, if this goes green all the way, it looks like the only sort of fight the race lead that will happen would be between Henry Bennett and Lucas Laville. But still 47 laps to go, and the big old caution might come out, and all of a sudden Hagan will be in the chance. Stanley, Shoemake, Grosser, pretty much anyone inside the top 10 will have a varying degrees of chance at taking this one at the end.
Well, and let's not forget that as we get farther and farther along into this stint with the tire temperatures, as the temperatures out on track as high as they are, has dropped down a little bit, down to about 46 degrees Celsius right now. Still very, very toasty, that these tires are going to be doing a lot of wear and they're going to be harder to control. Remember, as we saw them come in on the last round of pit stops, it certainly was a big problem there for a lot of them, a lot of these drivers, that they came on in, and that's when we saw a lot of these drivers starting to lose control of the car a little bit at the end of these pit stop cycles. So that is something that these drivers are going to have to be keenly aware of. They're going to have to keep their eyes open for, and they are going to have to be careful about, as we're seeing a little bit of twitchiness there coming off at turn 2 for these drivers. They're going to have to be careful.
I mean, we've seen that pretty much all day from the middle of this point, middle of the stints forwards. Turn 2 seems to have been the problem in a lot of cases for these guys, and we've actually seen a few weird incidents out of 3 as well on occasion where people have plowed the ball.
And part of that is the swirling winds that you do get at this Indianapolis Motor Speedway. You can get caught out so easily by a gust of wind, and it just throws you towards that outside wall, and I suspect that's played a part in a couple of the incidents so far today as well. It is worth noting that the track temperature is starting to drop just a little bit here, and it will start to drop over the final 50 laps of this race, because we are 2:15 in sim time right now, so it will get slightly cooler as this run goes on. But look at how dark that groove is. We do have the accumulating effects of the tires to worry about as well, and that will make the track slicker.
Indeed it will, and as if you needed the track any slicker in this situation. The race did start with, well, at least practice started with a 50% wear as default, but of course that track evolution will be happening not only through practice, but through the 159 laps that we've run already. Excuse me, not 159 laps, because we had 2 laps off of the start, but when we're pacing. But either way, that will affect things slightly, and will mean that, again, the grip has been ever-changing over the course of this one. And, well, if you want to go out wide and out onto the grey, as is the term here in IndyCar, that just makes things even worse than it already is if you have a bunch of marbles out there.
Yeah, it certainly does, and especially as this race continues on, those marbles are going to continue to build up. We're going to continue to see those drivers have to really stick down to the low side of the track. I mean, let's not forget the swan song in these IRO5s. J.R. Hildebrand getting it wrong in 2011, running up wide, coming through turn 4 at the very, very last moment of the race and getting caught up into those marbles. It is a very, very tricky situation to be in. When you're in that spot, you got to be very, very careful not to go too wide.
What has happened to this earlier?
It almost looked like a steering failure of some kind.
You might have grazed the wall. We stay green.
This looks like a hardware failure to me.
What in the world? I mean, I've seen that happen before, but that's like one of the weirder incidents I've seen with a problem with the steering. Yeah, he did get in the wall. Let's wind it back a bit further.
Yeah, so he's coming through turn 2 here, and the incident happens actually well past the exit of the corner. Gets high, but not too high, and then he comes down towards the inside, and then suddenly it just sort of tracks back up. So it really looks like he wasn't getting the full inputs that he wanted from his wheel. It was very jerky and very, very strange.
I wouldn't even necessarily say jerky. I think that's like overly smooth. Look, because he didn't even react to it.
Well, but then so he turns, and then it stops turning again, and then he turns, and then it, like, you can see that it's almost like he was only getting intermittent signals from his wheel.
Yeah, well, that's one of the weirder ones, because when you have a full disconnect of the wheel, it usually locks to the right, doesn't it? Usually it's the locking to the right. But having a wheel failure like that, I haven't necessarily seen before. So the first time for everything here, takes Ilya Ollier out of the race. it might mean that Jack Turner, well, if he gains a couple of laps here, he'll be able to promote himself up into a P13, despite the damage, despite the visual glitch of damage, shall we say, on his rear wing. So yeah, that'll help him. But again, I'm just kind of shook by that, to be honest.
Yeah, a very, very strange incident. I can't recall, I have to agree with you, Andrew, I can't recall ever seeing anything like that, but that's frankly going to be of no concern here at this point to Henry Bennett up the front of the field. He continues to have about a 2.5-second gap over Lucas LaVille. That's well out of draft range here. He is just running a race that he wants to run here at this point. He's doing a great job here of just keeping everything together, running some picture-perfect lines. Probably about 5 laps until the fuel window will open, but Andrew, as you said a little bit earlier, probably going to take this as long as he can possibly go toward the end of the race.
I think we'll see Grosser come down pit lane in another 2 laps, maybe 3 if he can stretch it out just a little bit. And he'll be the one who's opening up the windows, and then we'll see very quickly who's following what strategy from there.
Yeah, decides to miss the pit lane this time around, but like you said, he is definitely the first due down in of these leading cars. In fact, pretty much everyone. So yeah, Grosser will be the first one in, and then it depends on what the calls are from the rest of the drivers. They decide to come down in early, get the undercuts. If you're Henry Bennett, like Andrew said, you might want to try and extend this stint out and go as far as you can, and then come back down in, get that low fuel load, get those fresh tires, and then put yourself in the best positions to go and win this race. But nothing is a guarantee from this point forwards. A 2.7-second gap that Lucas LaVille has to the race lead at the moment is a relatively wide margin to try and surpass, but Lucas LaVille, he knows how to win championships and potentially knows how to go and win an Indy 500 as well. So, you know, even though he's almost 3 seconds back, I guess he still has a little bit of hope.
Yeah, holding on to a little bit of hope here. And we never know exactly what's going to happen in terms of the pit stop sequences. It does look like Robert Grosser is going to be the latest to come down into pit lane here at this point. Grosser bringing that car into the pits, getting what we anticipate to be his final round of service.
Full fuel tank as well, 11.8 seconds, and off and away between the green cones he goes. And, well, that is the first sign of action down on towards pit lane for the final sequence of stops. Lucas LaVille actually losing a little bit more time to your race leader because of dealing with that little bit of lap traffic. So that is not going to help the situation. He lost about 0.4 to half a second as a result of that. So that could be so crucial when it comes to this final run towards the green flag after they come down in and get their final stops done. It's all these little margins that swing one way or the other, isn't it? Meanwhile, Henry Bennett, decent amount of clear track ahead of him, so no worries about lap traffic here, at least for the moment for him.
He was potentially running into Jamie Wilson, but Wilson is down on pit lane for his final stop as well, so that puts Henry Bennett in a nice, comfortable position here. Basically, all he's got to do is just extend this stint as long as he can, just be nice and smooth, because he's got a nice 3.3-second gap, and he's just praying that nothing happens on the track that would bring out a yellow flag.
Don't do it. Henry Bennett coming up towards the Arda Bricks now. Again, another lap staying out there. Same with Lucas LaVille as well. Ethan Egan, he's in 3rd place. He decides that he wants to stay out. Meanwhile, Marshall Stanley deciding to come down in with 33 laps, so well, getting towards 34 laps on the stint there. So another driver to come down in and take their final stops here. No one else visiting the pit lane here just yet. But Stanley in, looks like he's going to get into his pit box okay. Yes, he doesn't have to try and reshuffle and try and get himself into his box securely, so he'll be able to go up on the jacks, take those tires, take the field to the end, and go for the rest of the 34 laps, coming up to 33 that we have to go. Bennett again staying out, same with LaVille as well. Egan, he's heading his way through the final corner. Does he decide to angle his way in? Not just yet. So any moment now, these guys will be heading their way down and in.
Yeah, any moment here at this point, just waiting. That is the name of the game for these drivers. It does look like here's Randy Shoemake coming in for Aero X. He's going to be bringing that car in, the latest to take it. Going to be very interested to see when LaVille and Bennett decide to pull this car in. Again, as we still wait for Egan and Styles as well. Track temperature falling a little bit. It just continues to be a little bit of an up and down here for that track temperature as we continue to go on.
Bennett has decided to come down and in for his final pit stop of the day, assuming we go green all the way to the end. So this is a crucial stop for Henry Bennett. He's got to absolutely nail this in his pit box. He can afford to maybe have it a little bit scruffy because considering he had a gap, but no, he gets it perfect and in, right in the middle. Up on the jacks he goes, fresh tires going onto that car, dropping down off the jacks, waiting for the rest of the field to go in, and gets himself away from his pit box. 10.3 seconds on the stop.
Really nice stop there from the 007, and the interesting thing for me is that this is sort of the opposite of what I was expecting. Lucas LaVille comes in a lap after Henry Bennett. I thought LaVille would be the first one to blink and Bennett would extend as far as he could, but it looks like LaVille is coming in one lap later, and that's going to mean just a little bit fresher tires, a little bit less fuel coming into this car during this stop, but I don't think it's going to be enough to get him within drafting range of that 007.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Drops down off the jacks. What's the pit stop time going to be? It's 9.5 for Lucas LaVille versus Henry Bennett's 10.3. So that is still a gain of around about 0.8 of a second going the way of the way of Lucas LaVille here at the moment. And let's see where that puts him in relation to him, because his lane time was pretty good as well. So let's see. Henry Bennett's already gone by. There he is, coming down the back straight. There is Lucas LaVille. The gap stands at, well, getting up towards 3.1 seconds, which is around about what it was when he came down towards the pit lane.
The more things change, the more they stay the same up at the front of this field. Shoemake going to be able to slot his way back into about 5th place position here. It looks like we've got some pretty healthy gaps up at the front of the field, although we're going to wait here for a little bit more of the pit stops to be able to work their way around, as that is Franz Josef Stum coming out of the pits right now. It looks like he'll be able to exit out in about 10th place. So the other AeroX Racing driver going to find himself back down, a lap down, unfortunately, as Joshua Chin is able to breeze on by him, and that'll put Stum down in 11th.
We have had one change in the order, and that is Marshall Stanley was able to get around Ethan Egan with an undercut there. So that's the number 25 machine up into the podium position. That's 2 out of 3 for Vortex Sim Racing, and Egan did not have a good pit stop sequence there.
He did not. That is fair to say. He had the longest stop of the top runners, at least. Grosser and Wilson had longer stops because, well, that's understandable considering they were they had to take a bit more fuel for the end of the race. But for Stanley, yeah, that's a little bit awkward there. And the lane time even worse than his box time in terms of comparatively speaking to the rest of the drivers as well. So. Yeah, not ideal, and of course the undercuts that, the undercut that Stanley was able to get. I'm getting my drivers all mixed up here. Yeah, Egan, not the most ideal stop, but Stanley capitalizing on that one actually establishes a 4.2 second gap over Egan as a result of all of that as well. And to add, a little bit of a bonus there. Well, ruined for a second. Chin's heading his way back down on towards the pit lane for, I assume, his final stop. Again, a day to forget for Chin.
Yeah, really tough one there for your champion apparent there. And that's just the way Indianapolis goes. It does not play favorites. It does not like anybody necessarily as they run. So plenty of drivers here going to find themselves in that little bit of trouble. Plenty of drivers who are absolutely the best of the best have come up a little bit short in Indianapolis. And Joshua Chin, certainly one of the best, having a little bit of a rough run here today. A little bit of a closer battle out on track right now. Jack Styles and Robert Grosser within about 2 seconds of one another here at this point.
That is your closest battle out on circuit right now with 27 laps to go, and assuming green flag all the way to the end, no stops to go either. So this one might develop because Grosser has been relatively strong behind the wheel of that Vortex Sim Racing car. Again, he made a big strategy call earlier on, but with a 6-lap deficit in terms of tyres to Jack Styles, maybe this one looking a little less possible for him to go and achieve. So Styles, a comfortable 6th place at the moment for the iconic car. There's Randy Shoemake in P5 at the moment in a bit of no man's land, and that could really be applied to everyone inside of this top 5. The gap's significant between all of them at the moment, and even further down the field, the gaps just get even further apart as well. So it might just be like this until the very end of the race now, pending any other issues.
And speaking of issues, I believe Jamie Wilson might have just hit the wall off a 2.
Oh, and he's off the racing line as well. This is unlikely to be a caution. Brings it down and stops on the grass. Takes the toe back to pit lane, and that is going to keep us green with 25 laps to go. Let's see what happens. Oh, he's already in the wall there. Let's wind it back even further.
And it's right in front of your leader, Henry Bennett. Jamie Wilson, he sees Henry Bennett coming to his inside here, gives him a little bit of space, and then just too much space left for the 007 car, and Wilson finds himself one-way ticket into that wall. Again, that gray area on the top of the track just comes back and bites the Team Chimera car there.
I'm surprised with him going so slowly there that didn't trigger a caution.
Yeah, we got really lucky.
Yeah, we got very, very lucky on that. That was most certainly a time that I would have thought that we would have seen a caution come out, but clearly iRacing had different ideas for us.
Also, look at how it's affected the gap. It was at 3.2, 3.3. Now it's 2.1 between Henry Bennett and LaVille. So Bennett had to slow up on the inside because of that, and he's gotten trapped by a little bit of lap traffic there. I think that was the bright green car of Jack Turner. So that has basically meant that he's lost a third of the advantage that he had. Of course, it's still a bit of a rift between the two of them. 2 seconds is quite a bit in this type of racing. But it's 2 seconds, well, it's 1 second fewer than Henry Bennett would be comfortable with.
And sometimes in a situation like this, if you're Lucas LaVille, that having that little bit extra incentive, getting your opposition that little bit closer, that's all you really need to start sort of turn up the wick a little bit more and find those extra 10th here and extra 10th there, and suddenly you're on the back of the leader here, because that's really what Lucas LaVille needs to concentrate on right now. Is he's got to do a 10th of a lap better than Henry Bennett over the rest of this race, and then he'll be right on the back of him come 5 to go, and then all bets are off. But he's got to find a way to find that 10th, 1/10 per lap.
It's difficult to find the 10th around here, especially when in qualifying you talk about trying to find 100th or 1,000th.
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult to find. You have to be picture perfect with your lines if you're Lucas LaVille. And it's so hard to do at this stage of the race too, because you've done it for so long in this race. You're mentally exhausted by this point. Your attention is starting to wane. Your muscles are sore. So you're just getting to that point where you need to find that little bit of extra gear and be pinpoint accurate for these final 22 laps.
Line. 1.9 seconds is the gap at the moment, and you are right, it's just under 1/10 of a second lap on average to be able to get himself at least right up to the back of Henry Bennett. Of course, that will be getting easier as the closer he gets, as he feels more of that draft. But right now, he's well outside drafting range, and that's a big problem. So this is where a lot of the hard work has to be put in, because maybe things will end up getting a little bit, at least a little bit easier for a while if he's able to establish himself in the draft. But then, of course, right after that, it gets even harder again because you have to try and find a way past.
Yeah, exactly, and rest assured that Henry Bennett is not going to let that lead go easily. He is going to be fighting tooth and nail, as it does look like on that last lap, Bennett was able to pull away a little bit to the tune of about 7 thousandths of a second, but that's all the kind of gap that you really need to be able to have to keep going away as much as possible. So Bennett doing what he needs to do here, probably recognizing that gap, maybe pushing just a little bit more here in the 007 to see if he's going to be able to just keep that gap extended for the next, what it will be 19 laps as they cross over.
I like to call it gap management, DJ. That's what Henry Bennett is doing right now. He's not pushing so hard that he's taking risks, but he's just doing enough that he's maintaining that gap with Lucas Laville. He knows that Lucas has to be taking time out of him if he has any hope of getting close to him. So as long as he's maintaining the gap, that's mission accomplished for Henry at this point.
Gap is really not fluctuating, so if Bennett is managing this, he's managing it very, very well indeed. But of course, in the ninth, well, coming up to 18 laps that we have to run, potentially there's a little bit of lap traffic further down the road, which might factor into things. Remember, it was lap traffic, actually 2 instances of lap traffic that caused Bennett to lose a second. If he loses another second now, that's a gap of 0.8, 0.9. That's when draft starts to happen.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That's what we've got to be worried about here, or what that's what Henry Bennett, rather, has got to be worried about here as they continue to work their way around. 18 laps to go, call it 17 and a half laps to go here for them as we continue to keep our eyes peeled here. What is going to happen? Henry Bennett for Powerslide Motorsports, 17 laps at the line.
It will be, and look at the lap for Laville. He's pulled in a couple of tenths.
I was about to say Lucas Laville had a really strong lap there, that last one, and it could be that Chin being right behind him, changing the aero balance on the car just slightly, and it's allowing him to gain a little bit of an advantage, and he's closing in on that 007 car, but he's really got to find now a full 10th a lap, and there's no two ways about it. He's got to dig deep here.
Yes, and well, imagine if Chin influences who takes the race win here today, and well, he always finds some way to get himself involved if he's not directly in the battle for the race win. Chin just can't get himself out in the limelight, it seems, as they head their way across the line once again, and well, gap has been recovered slightly on that lap by Henry Bennett, only by a couple of hundredths of a second, but even just keeping this gap stable is a race-winning strategy at the moment.
Well, but Bennett's got Art McEwen right in front of him, so that's what's allowing him to draft up right now. Is he had a little bit of a draft there. He's just pulled out to pass Art on the back straightaway, but now once he's cleared Art, it's going to be Lucas Laville who's going to have that draft very, very quickly here.
Yeah, and it's all about catching this lap traffic now at the right times, because Bennett will put it in a decent place. Not ideal, because it compromised his line on the entry to turn 3, so it wasn't as good as it could be. Can Laville find this pass in a better place? Because he's got the gap down now to 1.6, going to be feeling the dirty air a little bit coming through 1 and 2. If he lines up this run as best as he can through turn 2. Oh, he gets so close to the wall coming off the corner. He's been able to scrap something together out of that one. Perhaps had to lift out slightly to avoid the wall, but 1.6 seconds is still the gap.
Yeah, and that was about as close could be up to the wall there as they run. It looks like through the first half of the lap, he was still able to gain a little bit of time. It looks like it is at about 1.6 as they cross over here at this point. 15 laps to go as they continue to work, make it 14 here at this point. The gap tickling down under 1.6 seconds. I think Laville is continuing to close. And remember, again, at that 9/10, 1 second mark, that's when everything comes to play for here. This is exactly the kind of pressure cooker you want if you are in the stands at an Indianapolis 500.
Yeah,
and that was a big risk from Lucas Laville, taking as much throttle on the corner exit there. So you know that he's on it. You know that he knows this is the shot that he has. He has to find a way to get into the draft so quickly here, or else he's just going to see that 500 win slip away.
Indeed he is. Just shy of 1.5 coming across the line. Laville is closing in. He needs to keep up this rate of catching for at least the next couple of laps until he can start feeling the draft off of the back of Bennett, off of that 007 car. This is looking a little bit more sketchy now, and it's not only applying the pressure to Bennett, you know, seeing that car grow in his rearview mirrors, but also if he has that F3 box, if he has that relative timing up, he's seeing this gap tick down, and that is a different kind of pressure.
Oh, that's an altogether different kind of pressure. You know that that gap is closing, and you have to basically just eliminate that F3 box out of your sight. I frankly wouldn't be surprised here if Henry Bennett had it up, and once that gap came down under 1.5 seconds, he got rid of it.
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he's just turned it off at this point. And if I was his spotter, that would definitely be what I would have told him to do. Just turn it off, run your laps, push all the way to the end of the race. Don't focus on the time.
Typically, for me, what I would do is I have it up on the straightaways, and then you have to pick a point on the straightaway and look away from it in order to maximize your corners. So that's what I would do if I were in Henry Bennett's shoes. I would want to keep it up just to know that I'm doing what I need to do, because even though it's closing in at this point, guys, he's still 1.3 seconds up with 11 laps to go. So he's still maintaining that gap at just enough in order to do what he needs to do to win this.
Just enough, DJ. In the end, though, it might not be enough to recall the famous F1 commentator Murray Walker. I usually hate using his lines, but this one seems appropriate. It's one thing to catch, another thing to pass, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is, and rest assured, as we said a little bit earlier, Bennett's not going to make this easy. This will be a fierce battle up at the front of the field. Yes, both of these drivers will be on used tires. They will be on lower fuel tanks. These cars are going to be a little bit sketchy as they battle, but Bennett is not going to let this win up easily by any stretch of the imagination.
10 to go. Gap 1.2 seconds. As they're heading their way down the back straight now. Laville has been closing in by around about a tenth of a second a lap over the past couple. He could have done with doing that or starting that a bit earlier, Andrew, but this is still not outside the realms of possibility for him.
No, he still has a shot at this. The difficult thing for Laville is that the longer that we get into this stint, the worse his tires are going to be. So when he gets to the slipstream, will he have the tires to be able to overcome the aero wash that he's going to get, or will he just find himself hitting a wall of air? So that's the other thing to consider if you're Lucas Laville. You need to get up there sooner rather than later.
Look at this battle for P7 as well. This is not what the leaders needed, that's for certain, because there's always a risk of these two coming together and changing the complexion at the end of this race. Andrew Woods getting himself a good run out of turn 4. He'll get himself towards driver's left-hand side here in this battle for P7 with Robert Grosser. Grosser on the outside of turn 1. Can't do anything there. We'll try and diamond off the corner. Oh, Woods got to be careful with the pushing off the corner there, almost getting up in towards the wall. Again, both of them missed the apex out of turn 2. And, well, here comes Robert Grosser back on him.
Grosser's going to go down to the inside, or the outside rather, trying to get that move on Wood. Wood going defensive. They're still going to be side by side coming down through 3. Let's see there. Grosser's going to have to back off and try this a different day, but this battle is nowhere near done.
And don't forget here, DJ, that Grosser is on that extreme fuel save strategy, so he's trying to find a way to battle with Wood while at the same time saving that extra amount of fuel that he has to do on this stint. So it's going to be a fine line for Grosser through the rest of this race. I think he has the faster car compared to the Team Chimera car, but I don't know whether he'll be able to finish in front of the 64 of Andrew Wood.
Here we go, taking in the middle of the road. Does Andrew Woods. Grosser keeping himself in behind just for the moment. But it is so close between these two. Oh no, they almost come together. Coming out of turn 3, through turn 4 now. Grosser towards the inside on such a worn tyres. Coming up to 30 laps on the stint. These guys still doing battle. In terms of the race lead, it looks like Laville's run has sort of petered off here, not gaining as much time as he needs to try and make a challenge of this towards the very end. Meanwhile, the battle for P7 still raging on. And, well, Andrew Wood on the outside has to be so careful.
It is so sketchy, running the outside like that, just continually getting up into the gray. He has got to be so careful on that throttle, on that steering wheel, making sure that he's not putting too aggressive of the inputs there, because that car is wanting to break away on him, and it is an amazing testament to his car control that he's able to not only keep it in contention, but keep ahead.
Doing very, very well indeed is Andrew Wood here for the moment. We'll have a brief look at what's happening for the race lead. Gap has actually extended between Henry Bennett and Lucas Laville, so Bennett's found a little extra here in the final couple of laps of this race to make sure that the hopes are dashed of Lucas Laville. And it might just be that 007 car that takes the checkered flag here. We cannot speak so soon, of course. We still got the risk of a yellow hanging over our heads as well. It'll have to happen now if we want to get a restart, let me tell you that. Andrew Wood, this is Robert Grosser on the way down the pit straight then. They've got a bit of traffic ahead of them in the form of Jack Turner, which will be helping Andrew Wood in terms of the draft at the moment and keeping himself ahead.
Yeah, we have basically one more lap. In fact, I think Henry has just crossed the line past the point of no return here. But this is the battle that we're concentrated on. It is Robert Grosser versus Andrew Wood. And Jack Turner, he's going to be a pick for Grosser. I think Grosser's going to have the position here. Will Wood be able to get back? Because we know Grosser's fuel saving. Will Wood be able to find a way back around that number 6 cut?
Might do, coming out of turn 4 now. Coming across the line to take 4 laps to go, at least for these guys. Of course, Bennett and Laville a little bit closer to the end as here we go. Wood to the inside through turn 1. Can't quite find the gap. Has to fall in further behind. Has to lift out to prevent himself washing up into the wall. Now coming through turn 2. Grosser takes a lot out of that. Almost hits the wall, but keeps his foot in it and keeps himself 3/10 ahead of Wood.
Yeah, and I want to give some credit here to Robert Grosser. He had the opportunity to really chop down on the front of Andrew Wood and cut off the air to the front of that number 64 machine. He didn't. He gave him space. That is good, clean, respectable driving, and a very, very heads-up thing there for him. Although we've got another little battle here. This is Ethan Hagen and Randy Shoemake. Everything's starting to fire off here with 3 laps to go.
Indeed it is. So we potentially might be looking at a couple of flashpoints here in these final 2 laps. Laville has closed in by another couple of tenths of a second for the race lead, but I think that's just a little bit too little, too late. The Vortex Sim Racing driver and previous champion of the Classic Indycar Series, powered by the Buttkicker. Henry Bennett in towards turn number 3. It will be the white flag lap next time he heads out of turn number 4, and he is just 1 lap away from taking an Indianapolis 500 win here in the Classic IndyCar Series. Coming across the line now, it's going to be white flag in the air, 1 more lap to go at the end of 500 miles of racing for Henry Bennett and Lucas Laville in behind as well. In terms of the battle between Hagen and Shoemake, that still stands at around 4/10 of a second. Similarly so between Robert Grosser and Andrew Wood. Wood might have run out of steam here towards the very end of the race. He closes it in to about 2.5 of a second as he heads his way towards the back end of the lap now. But for Henry Bennett in the 007 car, started on the front row, 2nd place to be exact. Made all the right calls, has shown incredible pace over the course of this race. And under pressure from Lucas Laville at the very end, Henry Bennett is an Indy 500 winner here in the Classic IndyCar Series, powered by the Buttkicker. Further behind, you have Ethan Hagen versus Randy Shoemake heading their way out of the final corner now. Hagen might just about be able to hold on to this one for a P4. Fantastic stuff. Meanwhile, Grosser versus Andrew Wood. We've been talking about this battle over these last couple of laps. Wood might just have himself an opportunity at getting this done coming out of turn number 4 here. As long as he size up the run, he's got a massive run. He dips himself towards the inside line here. Is he able to get it as they head towards the yard of bricks? It's going to be a photo finish between these two. I think Andrew Wood might have just about made that one work. Wow.
Yeah, he was able to get that done by 37 thousandths of a second, timing that to absolute perfection, as you said there, coming off the corner, Connery. That is what you want to see out of a finish out of the Indianapolis 500. Let's take a look at that replay.
Here we go. Oh, he was so close to the wall coming out to that final turn as well. There they are, heading across the line by the slimmest of margins. I have to wonder if Grosser was just about out of fuel.
Yeah, it did look like he was just sort of sputtering there as he crossed the line, so I think it might have just been a little bit too far for Grosser there, and I think he just sputtered coming across that line.
Yeah, he did sputter. He did sputter just a couple of meters away from the line. And it was enough for Andrew Wood to steal P7 away. Oh, the finest of margins.
And it goes to show 500 miles comes down to just that smallest of margins at the end on fuel. And that's just how Indy works.
Henry Bennett will take the celebrations here at the Indy 500s. The classic IndyCar series powered by the Buttkicker. It's the MKT manufacturing Indy 500, and Henry Bennett is our race winner. What a race we've had here at the very end. We were on the edge of our seats looking at LaVille and seeing if he was able to try and close that gap. The battles going on in behind as well were similarly exciting, but we do have to take a moment here just to go through our race results from Indianapolis. Henry Bennett takes the race win by just shy of a second, back to Lucas LaVille with Marshall Stanley in third place. Ethan Agan fourth place ahead of Randy Shoemake in fifth. Jack Stiles in sixth with Andrew Wood just a squeak ahead, just about 500ths of a second ahead of Robert Grosser. Then you got Franz Josef Stern in P9. Then you got Joshua Chin rounding out the top 10. Then you got Art McEwen in P11 with Jack Turner P12. Jamie Wilson, Vissa, Ilya Olia, and Hannes Pickman rounding out the top 15. There's a lot of retirements here today, everyone. Nate Michael P16, Cameron Dance P17, Mike Granting P18, Robert Ankel P19, Jan Hoffman in P20. Andrew Aitken P21, Bobby Love P22, Jonathan Diggs P23. Then you got Silvassi, Kinder, Tucker, and Woodall rounding out the finishing results right there. So we'll just take this moment to congratulate Henry Bennett on a very well-deserved race win. And of course, we can't really forget about Joshua Chin, who of course is our official Classic IndyCar Series powered by the Buttkicker winner in terms of the Drivers' Championship there. So fantastic stuff for Chin. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to cap it off with an Indy 500 win. Either way, good work through the season to make that championship win happen. But I don't know about you guys, but I think I need to go and have a nap now.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you there about that. That's what an Indy 500 will do. It'll definitely take it out of you as they go, as we take a great look there at the Indianapolis skyline. And certainly a fantastic race. Action right up to the end. Indy always delivers, Connery. There is no question about it.
Yep, no question about it whatsoever. And we're just waiting a couple of moments for our drivers to congregate in the waiting for interview room, and for us to have a little bit of a chat with them. It seems like they're slowly but surely getting themselves in now. I'm just primarily waiting for Henry Bennett to pop his head in and get a word with our Indy 500 winner for the Classic IndyCar Series. But we will just take a moment, potentially, to have, until that happens, to have a little bit of a chat with Ethan Agan. And if you're okay with it, Andrew, you'll take this one away.
Ethan, it was quite the race that you had there. You were in the top 5 for most of the run, but you just couldn't quite pull it out there at the end for the podium. What happened there on that final pit stop sequence that sort of put you back behind Marshall Stanley?
I kind of made a mistake. I thought the field run was 31 laps, but it was 36. So one, I could have took less fuel, but at the same time, I tried to last as long as I can. So that also cost me time with Marshall and some of the others. But I mean, it's the Indy 500. Anything can happen. So luckily, we managed to come with P4, and it's been a good season.
Absolutely. And talking about the Indy 500, what's it like being in a race like that where it's sort of stop and start at certain points, but then you get these long green flag runs? How do you cope with figuring out the strategy on the fly to know when to pit and when not to pit?
It's tough, really. I mean, like, of course, when it comes to a long run, like you said, the car would just not handle the way you want to be. It could either be very tight or very loose. And when it comes to pit strategies, you got to think when's the right time to pit right before I get undercut, and when you need the tires the most. I mean, strategy is usually the key to win these type of races, these 500 miles. But I mean, first of all, Bennett was just way too strong, and there was no one that could beat him today.
Yeah, he was definitely looking like the strongest car out there, but we'll get you out of here on this one. What are your plans for the future in the Classic IndyCar Series? Are we going to see you back?
Absolutely, I'll be back next year with Iconic Motorsports and finish second this year, and hoping I'll be one more higher than this year.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ethan Egan. We'll see you next year.
Thank you.
There we go, Ethan Egan finishing 4th place today here in the Indianapolis 500. But we do have an Indy 500 race winner to talk to. And DJ, take it away with the man with all the prizes.
Henry Bennett tasting the milk here and being able to kiss the Borg Warner and kiss the bricks. How does it feel to be an Indianapolis 500 champion?
It feels great. Yeah. Really tired, but yeah, it was great.
I can imagine that looked like an absolutely exhausting race for you. I want to take you back to the last couple of laps there. Lucas Laville starting to close down on you. It looked like you were managing that gap as much as possible. What was going through your mind? Were you aware how close he was?
I think I squandered my lead because I had like 3.5 seconds coming into the last pit stop, so I didn't want to take any risks. So I took it really easy into the pits, out of the pits, and then lapping people, I was taking it really cautiously. And then I had that, while I was lapping Jamie, we had a bit of miscommunication. Like, I probably made a move that I probably wasn't the smartest, and it meant Jamie was offline and ended up tapping the wall, but that cost me about 1.5 seconds or 2 seconds. And then I was worried. Then the clouds came over, which I was worried about all day because my setup was, my car was set up for hot conditions, which was working all day. But when the clouds came over, Lucas just started closing that gap. So yeah, I was really pleased to see the clouds clear for the very last few laps.
Well, talk to me a little bit about that, because it seemed like that weather was absolutely fluctuating all throughout the day. Were you having to really keep an eye on that temperature and that cloud cover, and how hard was that making it to drive when we did get a little bit cooler out on the track?
You really had to drive the track. One of the toughest Indy 500s I've driven as far as the driving is concerned. Because usually, especially with the newer Indy cars, you're not really driving the track, you're driving the other cars. And when you're in clean air with the newer Indy cars, it's very easy. But with this Indy car, you're driving every single corner, no matter whether you're on your own or in a group. I was watching. I managed to just set up an overlay before the race to track the temperature. Because I've never had that before, because I knew it would be so important in this car. Watching the clouds every lap, especially at the end there when it was getting cloudy, like coming out of turn 4, I was like craning my neck in VR to look at the sky to see how much cloud cover there was and when it was going to clear. So yeah, it was something you kept track of the entire time.
Well, you were certainly able to keep track of it very, very well. And Henry, able to take the victory here. But I've got to ask you, who makes this possible for you? Who'd you like to thank?
A massive thank, as always, to Slide Motorsports. This win is kind of as a result of the work Adam did with the setup last year. This setup this year was only a minor tweak, mainly downforce changes. So most of the work was done last year between me and him. So big thank you to him and the rest of the team. Massive thank you to the CS guys. Always it's one of the best run leagues. It may be an older car, but they give it a lot of love. So massive thanks to Lucas and Robert and the other guys. Thanks to the whole field for putting on a really good race. And I can't remember how many laps we had green at the end there, but it felt like 3 stints at least.
Yeah, it was a good run there at the end. Henry, congratulations again. Get some rest. I know you said you were tired, but congratulations on the win, my friend.
Thanks, DJ.
There we go. Indy 500 winner here in the Classic IndyCar Series, powered by the Buttkicker, Henry Bennett in the 007 car. We will get the opportunity now to have a little bit of a chat with his closest competitor, Lucas Laville. You were within a second at the very end there of an Indianapolis 500 win in the Classic IndyCar Series. You were closing in some laps in those final couple of stages as well. Just take me through your thoughts after, being a runner-up here.
second sucks first and foremost. Yeah, I don't know. The car was just on rails the last stint, and brushing the wall with 5 laps to go is not the best way to finish the chase like that. But the car was awesome, just like I wanted, pretty much. Worked very well at the end, but Henry was just too good today. He led 160 something laps, so you can't take that away from him. He's deserving winner, but 3-time second and have a 3rd place as well. So that's 4 podiums without a win here in this series. That's starting to sting a little bit. I see where I lose the race. I think that's on pit entry. I was pretty much always safe. Since Marshall got busted one time, I just kept it safe, but a bit too safe. I think that's where I lose the time I needed at the end.
Yeah, and well, it was an interesting race for you because starting in P23, that's where no one really wants to start towards the very back of the field. Did you feel that starting all the way back there, that even a podium finish would be possible?
Oh yeah. I was very confident in the race car, and I knew that being smart at the beginning, like the first couple of stints, I would be able to claw my way back up, which is exactly what happened. Working with my teammates all the way through to stay together and move slowly but surely. I wasn't too worried about passing people. It was just finding the good people to hang out with for a bit, and then pick the right time to make a move. And I knew the car was capable with the package we had, so that I wasn't too worried. It was just like being in position, considering Josh, Ethan, and Henry and Jan as well for a time were a class up the field. It was just getting there, and once I got there, it was game on. But I didn't have enough for Henry. That pretty much sums it up.
Yeah, and well, there's always next time, isn't there? And you had your championship win under your belt last season. You also lose that one out to the Chin this time around. What's the attitude now for any potential next season of the Classic IndyCar Series? Yeah, you wanting to come back with a vengeance, hopefully?
We'll see. I'm not sure about the schedule yet, so I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make our races again, pretty much like this year. So it's pretty much gonna be challenging, and I know we have a good car, and I can run with Josh and Henry. For the rest, we'll see. My target is still 500, like everybody in this field, is to win this race. Pretty much makes the whole year. So second sucks.
Yeah, and no racing driver ever wants to come second. I mean, some might even prefer to finish further down the order than second.
Yeah.
Because you know how close you were to the race win. But I'll leave you to it. I'll leave you to get back to the rest of your team, Lucas. It was a good effort for you today, and you should focus on the positives rather than what was almost to be.
Yeah, cheers. I just wanted to give as an admin, I want to give a big shout out to the whole roster and the sponsors, the stewards, and you guys at RaceSpot for all the work this year. It's been pretty good. We have a very deserving champion and very deserving 500 winner. So this is positives that we can keep with us for this year, with some good prizes that Henry's gonna enjoy after this race, and Josh as well. So the league keeps getting stronger and stronger, even though we didn't have a full field this year. I feel like we're still moving forward as a group, which is the biggest point in my view. And I can only hope that we have as much excitement next year as we did the last few ones.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed for that one, and we'll see you next season, Lucas, if you can make the races.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Lucas Laville, second place in the Indy 500 here for the Classic IndyCar Series. We will just about have time to have quick-fire interviews. Next one, we're going to have a little bit of chat with Marshall. Marshall Stanley and DJ standing by with him. Very quick.
I am indeed. Marshall, a third place run out there. A little bit of a quiet last half of the race, but how was it from behind the visor?
It was a little wild, especially after speeding on pit road for the first green flag pit stop. That made everything a lot tougher, but got very lucky with 2 cautions, was able to get the wave around, get fuel back, had to start from the back and just claw my way back up to the front. I just think today our team really just didn't have enough for Henry there at the end, and we've really made a lot of mistakes. And as a lot of people know, you make any small mistake here at Indy, it pays so much dividends throughout the race. So it was, all in all, it was fun, but I think we may be a little disappointed in the result. But we move on to next season. It wasn't the best year for us, and hopefully we can come back stronger next year.
What are your goals heading into next season? Obviously, we're going to hopefully see you all back there, but what are you guys hoping to achieve?
Hopefully bring back the team championship to Vortex. Maybe hopefully see a driver from Vortex be the champion next year would be great. But all in all, we just need good, clean finishes. That's kind of the main trouble we had this year, was just not being able to finish where we should have been on pace. And I think if we could do that next year, we'll be great. But all in all, it's a stacked field still. There'll probably be another stacked field next year, so you never know. Things could happen, but I'm excited. Excited to have an off season. I'm excited.
Well, we're excited for you, Marshall, and we wish you all the luck in the world when we see you next season.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you guys for the whole season, and hopefully see you guys next year.
Thank you very much.
Right back at you.
There we go. Marshall Stanley, third place here in the Indy 500. And now we have our final interview with the driver of, let's get Jack Styles in here. And, Andrew, standing by with Jack Styles.
So Jack, that was a little bit of an interesting day that you had here. You were in battles for most of the race. How did it look from behind the visor there?
I think it was the best I probably could have done. I was struggling a little bit with the rear right in the heat. It was just overheating, and especially towards the end of a run, just the rear of the car wasn't balanced at all. So I will take 6th. Maybe another 5 laps I could have got 5th and 4th, but 6th from 19th on the grid on my first attempt. Bearing in mind I'm used to being sat commentating on this race. Yeah, I'll take it. It was a good fun race.
Yeah, you mentioned this is your first time. So what was it like going through a full 500-mile race at Indianapolis? I know you've probably raced shorter distances here, but isn't the 500 sort of just a different animal altogether?
It's not my first 500 here. Okay. I've done 2 before. 1 I finished. 1 I got about 40 laps from the end and had a bit of an issue with a weight jacker that was set wrong. So this is the second one I've finished. It's the first one I've done in this car though, and it's a completely different beast to the IR18. You know, it's just the way it's set up, the way you drive it, completely different. It's a lot to think about. My body hurts now. My direct drive wheel was taken out on me quite a lot, but yeah, that was a tough race to get through it. I mean, Cam didn't. He had issues sort of just after halfway, so I think just to finish, that was my first aim, but to have a good finish, I'm happy with that.
Absolutely. Now, looking forward, what's next season looking like for you and your team in the Classic IndyCar Series? Will we see you back? Will you be contesting the full season?
Potentially. Not confirmed yet. That's something we need to go and look away. This is pretty much our last commitment as a team for 2023 or for 2022 now, sorry. We have a car in eye for a sprint, but actually I don't know yet. I think me and Cam will be back. I'd like to come back. It's a good fun series. It just depends on times and commitment that I need to put into Orbis itself. We'll see. You never know. We might be on the grid for the first race in 2023.
Awesome. Well, hopefully we will see you there, but if not, best of luck to you and Orbit Motorsports, and congratulations on surviving your first Classic IndyCar Series Indy 500. You did a great job finishing 6th there.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
That was Jack Styles. Back to you, Connery.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Jack Styles having a decent run here in the Indianapolis 500 for the Classic IndyCar Series, powered by the Buttkicker. And that is just about where we're going to have to finish it, folks. It's been an incredible broadcast. It's been an incredible race here at the home of IndyCar. This was the MKT Indy 500 for the Classic IndyCar Series, powered by the Buttkicker. This was the finale, but my friends, this is not the end. next season of the Classic IndyCar Series, well, it will come sooner than you think. We have no dates for you at the moment, but you'll want to stay tuned to see when that potentially might happen. But from myself, I'm Connery Maddock. From DJ Clark, from Andrew Kinsella, we will have to say goodbye and